Welcome to the Daily Wire Backstage Mute This Debate Edition. I'm Jeremy Boring, known around these parts as your friendly neighborhood God King. That's lowercase g and lowercase k. And we're glad you've tuned in. Will Trump's performance be a departure from his last debate appearance? Can Joe Biden contain his rage if his family scandals are mentioned? How much of the word hunter will Trump be able to utter before he's completely muted by the moderator? Are there any actual undecideds at this point who'll be swayed one way or another based on this circus show? Probably not. Stick around, though, and you'll find out. Roll opening graphic. Joining me to discuss all of this and more, we have the Ben Shapiro, the Andrew Klavan, Michael Knowles. Coming up after the debate, we will also be joined by the lovely Elisha Krause. Reminder, stick around after the debate live stream for some instant analysis from us here on Backstage. If you're an All Access member, make sure you're watching this over on our Discuss page at dailywire.com, because we will be joining all of our All Access members in the live chat, reading your comments and taking your questions during the course of the actual debate. If you're not a Daily Wire Insider or All Access member, join now. We'll give you a 20% off discount with the coupon code DEBATE! That is DEBATE! The exclamation point is to make it confusing. Also, if you're an All Access member and you want your question read live on the air, submit them in the chat. Elisha will be joining us later in the show, as I mentioned, and she will be getting your questions to us. Gentlemen, what the hell is about to happen? Literally anything. The last time we were gathered together in this very room was the first presidential debate. This is the third presidential debate. There was no second presidential debate on account of the first presidential debate was an unmitigated disaster any way you cut it. What do you guys expect is going to happen tonight?
Well, I think that Donald Trump got the message. I mean, I think at first he was kind of saying, oh, that was great. I beat Biden up. But the polls didn't really reflect that. They didn't reflect as much damage as the press would like to say there was. And what really hurt him after that was getting the flu. I mean, that's what really got him. I think that really damaged him in the polls. But last time I said, I think the big surprise is going to be how much Trump now knows. And that actually was true for the first 5 minutes of the last debate until chaos ensued. So I'm sort of hoping he has that enough restraint to let that come out. They have this mute button that could help him because it'll allow Biden to talk. The more Biden talks, the more a fool he makes of himself. So possibly this could be a good comeback for Trump. But if there's some way that Trump can stomp on that, you can almost bet he will.
Michael, what do you think?
I agree with this mute button idea. Everyone is saying that the mute button is going to be used against Trump, and I'm sure that's what the moderator will try to do. The thing is, it would actually help Trump if he gets muted during Joe's answers. And the reason for that is not because Trump doesn't have good quips. He actually does have pretty good one-liners. It's because Joe Biden does much, much worse the more time you give him. And so whereas the Trump strategy last time was put Joe off his feet, Joe actually does pretty well when he gets off his feet. The guy is a slick politician. He doesn't know what state he's in, but he's pretty good at politics. And where he doesn't do very well is where he has time to finish. And so I actually think that I'm sure the Presidential Debate Commission was trying to hurt Trump, but I actually think unwittingly they may have helped him.
But Ben, will they use the mute in a way that doesn't appear to be an overt attack on the president? Does the media have enough discipline at this point to even come off with the appearance of objectivity?
I think they'll be careful here because I think that the last thing that they want is to keep underscoring this message, which is that they are biased against Trump. Now, they obviously are biased against Trump. They obviously hate Trump. I mean, you saw NPR today announce they will not cover the Hunter Biden story under any circumstances, which is your taxpayer dollars at work on behalf of Joe Biden. I mean, it's an in-kind contribution by NPR with your taxpayer dollars. It's basically tax fraud. But with that said, I think that they will be, I would say, fairly generous before they actually hit the mute button. And I think that more than that, Trump, I think, is going to be a lot more disciplined when it comes to not talking over people because he recognizes that was a bad thing. The bigger question is going to be what his angle has to be tonight. Because, I mean, we can all disregard the polls and we can say that Trump is ahead and then the debate doesn't matter. But if you think the debate actually matters and that this may be Trump's last attempt to turn this thing around, the question is, what should his message be? And there are two possibilities. Possibility number one is that he goes directly after the Hunter Biden issue, which has been, percolating for the last 2 weeks. The media have been trying to cover it up. Joe Biden, right before the debate, decided to issue a statement denying that he ever had held stock in a Hunter Biden business or discussed business with Hunter or any of that. You could see Trump try to go after it. I think the problem there is that it's kind of a complex story, and Trump is not a good storyteller. He's a good joke teller, but he's not a good storyteller, and there is a difference. Tucker Carlson is very good at laying out all of this stuff A to Z, but Trump is not. He kind of speaks in slogans, and he speaks in Twitterisms, so he's more likely to just go straight to the punchline of a story without actually laying out any of the details. I think his better policy tonight is probably going to be to just remind everybody that the economy was going great guns until COVID hit, and that if the Democrats take charge, they're now talking about making Bernie Sanders Secretary of Labor, which is insane. They're now talking about raising taxes so high that 50 Cent is off the bandwagon. Right? That I think might bear more fruit than, he's got to mention that Joe Biden is corrupt and that he's got corruption problems. But I think if he makes that the chief issue in the debate, it'll quickly get bollocksed up, especially because the moderator is going to then ask Trump to detail exactly how Biden is corrupt. And Trump just does not have the capacity to ferret out all of those particular thickets.
Well, if you're like those of us who watched the first debate and you're contemplating your mortality sitting here with us tonight, you need life insurance. The overwhelming truth of the matter is that almost every American is underinsured, especially if you have dependents who are in your care, people who need your provision, people who need you to take care of them. If something were to happen to you, what happens to your family? Shopping for insurance can seem like a daunting task, but our friends over at PolicyGenius.com make it easy. They combine a cutting-edge insurance marketplace with help from licensed experts to save you time and money. Right now, you could save more than 50% by using Policy Genius to compare life insurance. When you're shopping for a policy that could last for more than a decade, the savings really start to add up. Here's how it works, and I can tell you firsthand because I did it. I went over to PolicyGenius.com. I was skeptical. Listen, I was skeptical mostly because Policy Genius would always have Ben do the ads, and they wouldn't have me do the ads. And so I needed some life insurance for my wife. I went over to Policy Genius, and I went to one of their competitors as well. I really wanted to compare the service and see how it works. I went over to PolicyGenius.com. In only minutes, I was able to work out exactly how much coverage I needed and to compare quotes from all kinds of insurers, including the other one to whom I had gone and asked for a quote. Policy Genius compared those policies, and for as little as $1, and I was able to get a policy. You would be able to get a policy for as little as $1 a day. You might even be eligible to skip the in-person medical exam. I wasn't, because I smoke cigars and look at me. But once you apply, the Policy Genius team will handle all the paperwork and red tape. The best part is they work for you, not the insurance company. So if you hit any speed bumps during the application process, they take care of them. They did this for me. I ran into a speed bump. The COVID had happened. It was very difficult to get an appointment with a medical examiner. They sent one to our office, and there was a problem with that. They sent another one to our office and took care of me even during the early days of COVID, which was a very difficult time to have any sort of service provided. That's the kind of service that's earned Policy Genius a 5-star rating across over 1,600 reviews on Trustpilot and Google. It's also the kind of service that got them my endorsement, which I'm happy to share with you guys today. By the way, it's not just life insurance. PolicyGenius.com is available to help you with all of your insurance needs. It couldn't be a better service. They're one of our great sponsors, and especially for Backstage. I think they've been with us almost since the very beginning, and it's a terrific service. Please go over to PolicyGenius.com. You could save as much as 50% comparing quotes. What are you waiting for? Benjamin.
So, if you need life insurance, and if you have dependents, you absolutely do. Head on over to PolicyGenius.com right now to get started. You could save 50% or more by comparing quotes. Policy Genius, when it comes to insurance, it's nice and very, very important to get it right.
So I actually agree with Ben. I think that the president's trap tonight is the actual Hunter Biden email scandal. And that's because I don't think that he's going to be very effective at explaining it. It's not the kind of thing that explains well in a 2-minute segment, right? It's not the kind of thing that you explain well with a quip. I think the president can make the point that Joe Biden is corrupt. And the funny thing is, if he does, tomorrow there will be a 180 in the media, and every network will actually cover the Hunter Biden email story for the first time to repudiate whatever it is that the president says. I think that the president's the most important thing is don't be the cat who chases the laser, right? Don't go after the shiny object. The president needs to actually remind the American people that this modern left is utterly radical, that there's a kind of revolution happening in the country. It's not an election that's ultimately about policy. Almost every election in my lifetime has been about policy differences. And listen, policy differences can be life or death. Abortion, a life or death policy disagreement between the right and left. Healthcare, life and death policy disagreement between the right and left. Your right to bear arms, gun control. There are many issues, policy issues, that are very important. But this election is not fundamentally about policy distinctions. It's about the actual structure of our government. It's about our rights, from free exercise, free speech, the right to bear arms, due process, equal justice. It's about our norms. It's about our institutions. They want to alter fundamentally the Senate by doing away with the filibuster. They want to alter the Senate fundamentally by using simple majorities to add states so that the Senate is disproportionately left-leaning forever. They want to change the nature of the Supreme Court, which has for 151 years had 9 justices. They'd like to pack that and have more justices. They want to do away with the Electoral College. They want to do away really even with the 50-state federalistic way that we elect presidents and go to this national mail-in ballot sort of scheme that they have. I mean, really making the USPS a major part of our election process in the way that they are is the first step in nationalizing our elections. They want to do all of those things so that there is never another policy disagreement between the two parties, because there is only one party and there is only one set of policies. That can't be allowed to happen. That's the argument that the president needs to make. He needs to make the point that they want to change everything, and it's not even a peaceful revolution. Go walk the streets of Portland, go walk the streets of Seattle, and you'll see that it's actually in the early stages of being a hot revolution, and the only chance of stopping them is right now by getting out and voting. Will the president have that discipline, Michael?
This is a great point, actually, the difference between this policy or that policy and what does the government look like. It reminds me of Scalia's dissent in the Obergefell decision, which redefined marriage. He said, listen, the question of how the law defines marriage is not of particular interest to me. What is of interest to me is who rules me. What is the rule of government? And you know, since the beginning of the Trump administration, this idea of the deep state, the bureaucracy, the administration has been creeping up a lot. Do we the people run the country? Do we have a constitutional government? Or do we have something different that the progressives gave us? I think he can hit on that very well. He can actually hit on the Joe Biden corruption as well. He can say, Joe Biden was in office for 50 years. He didn't accomplish anything for the people. He accomplished a lot for himself. And now we've got this question, what kind of government do you want?
You know, one important thing that you brought up before is where the voters are. The conventional wisdom is that he has to sway, Trump has to sway the independents, the people who haven't made up their minds. But I agree with you, Jeremy, that there really aren't that many undecided voters. And Trump, either by strategy or just by instinct, and I really think it's his instinct, I really think it's a limitation on what he's capable of doing, has been playing the game that Molly Hemingway identified very early on, which was get the people who love you to come out. Because the one place where he is winning is on enthusiasm. It is really difficult to read these polls, which show Biden ahead, and then see the rallies that Trump is staging and compare them to the graveyard shift that Biden is doing. I mean, nobody turns
when you've been dead for 5 years, the graveyard shift is much more demographic.
It's a pretty good thing.
I mean, there may not be a lot of enthusiasm for Biden, but there's a lot of enthusiasm against Trump. And that really is the key to the election, which is why shifting the focus to Biden it's been a failure of the Trump campaign, that he's been unable to shift any focus, not for one iota of a moment, to Biden, not for a millisecond. And so, I think Biden made a crucial error today in something that he said in an interview and then tweeted it out. He said, America's an idea, and we've never lived up to the idea. And I just thought to myself, like, that would be a great thing for Trump to bring up. This idea that America has always kind of sucked, that America was an idea, but that we've never in our entire history lived up to that idea. So not when we were liberating the concentration camps, not when we were ending segregation, not when we were electing Barack Obama president of the United States. Like, at no point in all of American history have we ever lived up to our own ideals. That is obviously a lie. It's a really disdainful version of how you see the country.
I actually want to come back and talk about that a little bit more after the debate. I think it's a really important point. It's a huge gaffe by Joe Biden, and it merits our scorn, and I think it merits some of our attention tonight. First, I want to talk to you guys about fatherhood. I became a father almost 4 months ago, and now, you hear those studies about how they have little boys and little girls sit in a circle and they observe them. And over time, the little girls lean in and the little boys lean out because the little boys are looking for threats and the little girls are looking for community and looking for conversation. I've always been in there gabbing with the gals, and now I'm like a sharp-eyed predator trying to protect my flock. And that's why I'm happy that I have Ring. You should head over to Ring. They're give you the amazing ability to keep an eye on your house from anywhere. You have your own reason why you want to protect your home. Mine is like this big and sings herself to sleep. Yours might be, something less wonderful than my daughter. But whatever it is, it's your right to protect it. Your home matters to you. For one, it's probably the most valuable asset you own in its own right. So it seems kind of worth protecting. Ring has security products for every corner of your house, inside and out. Best of all, you can see it all in one simple app. With Ring, you can keep an eye on your home no matter where you are, right from your phone. If someone stops by, if someone's dropping off a package, you don't even have to be there. You can see exactly what's happening. You can even interact with them. You can communicate with them. You won't be caught unawares. And a big thing that's happening in LA right now is people steal your mail. They steal the packages that get left on your stoop that you order because of the pandemic. Ring gives you the ability to protect not only your home, but also your family and your property. Speak to whoever is at your door from anywhere with their wonderful video doorbells. Keep an eye on every piece of your house. Every one of us here has Ring. We've all had great stories. You've probably heard some of our stories that we've had with Ring. We've seen some amazing things. I heard my gate slam this weekend, 2 weekends ago, and it was a Saturday morning. I'm laying in bed, my gate slams. I'm like, what on earth is going on? Look at the camera, and there is a stranger in my backyard trying to sleep on my patio furniture. So I don't have to go down there and put myself in danger to see what's going on. I was able to deal with it safely because I was able to protect my house with Ring. Benjamin, you've been using Ring longer than any of us.
Indeed. Go to get a special offer on the Ring Welcome Kit at ring.com/backstage right now. It comes with that Ring Video Doorbell 3 and the Chime Pro. It's the perfect way to start that Ring experience, plus free 2-day shipping. Go to ring.com/backstage. That is ring.com/backstage.
Man, they used the Backstage promo code too, which makes me even happier about Ring. I want to remind you guys to stick around after the debate live stream for some instant analysis from us here at Backstage. By instant analysis, I mean we'll be going, what? Did you see that? Oh my God.
Wow.
Yeah. If you're an All Access member, stick around right now over at dailywire.com. Head to the Discuss page, and we'll be there with all of you live chatting, reading your comments, taking your questions as we watch what is sure to be the most consequential presidential debate, I think, in living memory. Certainly no incumbent has gone into a debate with more on the line than President Trump does today. Join us over at dailywire.com, all access, 20% off with the debate coupon code DEBATE! That's DEBATE! If you forget the exclamation point, that's because you're a normal human, but you will not get your 20% off. All right, everybody, we'll see you over there. Right now, I think we're going to tune in to the presidential debates, and we'll catch up with you right after.
Good evening from Belmont University in Nashville, Tennessee. I'm Kristen Welker of NBC News, and I welcome you to the final 2020 presidential debate between President Donald J. Trump and former Vice President Joe Biden. Tonight's debate is sponsored by the Commission on Presidential Debates. It is conducted under health and safety protocols designed by the Commission's health security advisor. The audience here in the hall has promised to remain silent. No cheers, boos, or other interruptions, except right now, as we welcome to the stage former Vice President Joe Biden and President Donald J. Trump. And I do want to say a very good evening to both of you. This debate will cover 6 major topics. At the beginning of each section, each candidate will have 2 minutes uninterrupted to answer my first question. The debate commission will then turn on their microphone only when it is their turn to answer, and the commission will turn it off exactly when the 2 minutes have expired. After that, both microphones will remain on, but on behalf of the voters, I'm going to ask you to please speak one at a time. The goal is for you to hear each other and for the American people to hear every word of what you both have to say. And so with that, if you're ready, let's start. And we will begin with the fight against the coronavirus. President Trump, the first question is for you. The country is heading into a dangerous new phase. More than 40,000 Americans are in the hospital tonight with COVID, including record numbers here in Tennessee. And since the two of you last shared a stage, 16,000 Americans have died from COVID. So please be specific. How would you lead the country during this next stage of the coronavirus crisis? 2 minutes, uninterrupted.
So, as you know, 2.2 million people modeled out were expected to die. We closed up the greatest economy in the world in order to fight this horrible disease that came from China. It's a worldwide pandemic. It's all over the world. You see the spikes in Europe and many other places right now. If you notice, the mortality rate is down 85%. The excess mortality rate is way down and much lower than almost any other country. And we're fighting it, and we're fighting it hard. There is a spike. There was a spike in Florida, and it's now gone. There was a very big spike in Texas. It's now gone. There was a very big spike in Arizona. It's now gone. And there are some spikes and surges in other places. They will soon be gone. We have a vaccine that's coming. It's ready. It's going to be announced within weeks, and it's going to be delivered. We have Operation Warp Speed, which is the military is going to distribute the vaccine. I can tell you from personal experience that I was in the hospital. I had it. And I got better, and I will tell you that I had something that they gave me, a therapeutic, I guess they would call it. Some people could say it was a cure. But I was in for a short period of time, and I got better very fast, or I wouldn't be here tonight. And now they say I'm immune. Whether it's 4 months or a lifetime, nobody's been able to say that, but I'm immune. More and more people are getting better. We have a problem that's a worldwide problem. This is a worldwide problem. But I've been congratulated by the heads of many countries on what we've been able to do. If you take a look at what we've done in terms of goggles and masks and gowns and everything else, and in particular ventilators, we're now making ventilators all over the world, thousands and thousands a month, distributing them all over the world. It will go away, and as I say, we're rounding the turn, we're rounding.
Taking control. In fact, not saying I take no responsibility initially. Anyone who's responsible for that many deaths should not remain as President of the United States of America. We're in a situation where there are 1,000 deaths a day now, 1,000 deaths a day, and there are over 70,000 new cases per day. Compared to what's going on in Europe, as the New England Medical Journal said, they're starting from a very low rate. We're starting from a very high rate. The expectation is we'll have another 200,000 Americans dead between now and the end of the year. If we just wore these masks, the president's own advisors have told him, we could save 100,000 lives. And we're in a circumstance where the president thus far and still has no plan, no comprehensive plan. What I would do is make sure we have everyone encouraged to wear a mask all the time. I would make sure we move in the direction of rapid testing, investing in rapid testing. I would make sure that we set up national standards as to how to open up schools and open up businesses so they can be safe, and give them the wherewithal, the financial resources to be able to do that. We're in a situation now where the New England Medical Journal, one of the most serious journals in the whole world, said for the first time ever that the way this president has responded to this crisis has been absolutely tragic. And so, folks, I will take care of this. I will end this. I will make sure we have a plan.
President Trump, I'd like to follow up with you in your comments. You talked about taking a therapeutic. I assume you're referencing Regeneron. You also said a vaccine will be coming within weeks.
Yes.
Is that a guarantee?
No, it's not a guarantee, but it will be by the end of the year. But I think it has a good chance. There are two companies, I think, within a matter of weeks, and it will be distributed very quickly.
Can you tell us which companies?
Johnson & Johnson is doing very well. Moderna is doing very well. Pfizer is doing very well. And we have numerous others. Then we also have others that we're working on very closely with other countries, in particular Europe.
Let me follow up with you, and because this is new information, you have said a vaccine is coming soon, within weeks now. Your own officials say it could take well into 2021 at the earliest for enough Americans to get vaccinated. And even then, they say the country will be wearing masks and distancing into 2022. Is your timeline realistic?
No, I think my timeline is going to be more accurate. I don't know that they're counting on the military the way I do, but we have our generals lined up, one in particular that's the head of logistics. And this is a very easy distribution for him. He's ready to go as soon as we have the vaccine. And we expect to have 100 million vials. As soon as we have the vaccine, he's ready to go.
Vice President Biden, your reaction, and just 40% of Americans say they would definitely agree to take a coronavirus vaccine if it was approved by the government. What steps would you take to give Americans confidence in a vaccine if it were approved?
Make sure it's totally transparent. Have the scientists of the world see it, know it, look at it, go through all the processes. And by the way, this is the same fellow who told you this is going to end by Easter last time. This is the same fellow who told you that, don't worry, we're going to end this by the summer. We're about to go into a dark winter, and he has no clear plan, and there's no prospect that there's going to be a vaccine available for the majority of the American people before the middle of next year.
President Trump, your reaction, he says you have no
I don't think we're
plan.
going to have a dark winter at all. We're opening up our country. We've learned and studied and understand the disease, which we didn't at the beginning. When I closed and banned China from coming in heavily infected, and then ultimately Europe, but China was in January. Months later, he was saying I was xenophobic. I did it too soon. Now he's saying, oh, I should have, moved quicker. But he didn't move quicker. He was months behind me, many months behind me. And frankly, he ran the H1N1 swine flu, and it was a total disaster, far less lethal, but it was a total disaster. Had that had this kind of numbers, 700,000 people would be dead right now, but it was a far less lethal disease. Look, his own person who ran that for him, who, as you know, was his chief of staff, said it was catastrophic. It was horrible. We didn't know what we were doing. Now he comes up and he tells us how to do this. Also, everything that he said about the way every single move that he said we should make, that's what we've done. We've done all of it. But he was way behind us.
Vice President Biden, your response.
My response is he is xenophobic, but not because he shut down access from China. And he did it late after 40 countries had already done that. In addition to that, what he did, he made sure that we had 44 people that were in there in China trying to get to Wuhan to determine what exactly the source was. What did the president say in January? He said, no, he said, he's being transparent. The president of China is being transparent. We owe him a debt of gratitude. We have to thank him. And then what happened was we started talking about using the Defense Act to make sure we go out and get whatever is needed out there to protect people. And again, I go back to this. He had nothing. He did virtually nothing. And then he gets out of the hospital and he talks about don't worry, it's all going to be over soon. Come on. There's not another serious scientist in the world who thinks it's going to be over soon.
President Trump, your reaction?
I say over soon. I say we're learning to live with it. We have no choice. We can't lock ourselves up in a basement like Joe does. He has the ability to lock himself up. I don't know. He's obviously made a lot of money someplace. but he has this thing about living in a basement. People can't do that. By the way, I, as the president, couldn't do that. I'd love to put myself in the basement or in a beautiful room in the White House and go away for a year and a half until it disappears. I can't do that. And Kirsten, every meeting I had, and I'd meet a lot of families, including Gold Star families and military families, every meeting I had, and I had to meet them. I had to. It would be horrible to have canceled everything. I said, you know, this is dangerous. And you catch it. And, you know, I caught it. I learned a lot. Great doctors, great hospitals. And now I recovered. 99.9 of young people recover. 99% of people recover. We have to recover. We can't close up our nation. We have to open our school, and we can't close up our nation, or you're not going to have a nation.
And of course, the CDC has said young people can get sick with COVID-19 and can pass it. Vice President Biden, I want to talk broadly about strategy, though. You have
Can I respond to that?
30 seconds, please, and then I have a question.
No, number one, he says that we're learning to live with it. People are learning to die with it. You folks home will have an empty chair at the kitchen table this morning. That man or wife going to bed tonight and reaching over to try to touch their, out of habit, where their wife or husband was, is gone. Learning to live with it. Come on. We're dying with it because he has never said, you said it's dangerous. When's the last time? Is it really dangerous still? Are we dangerous? You tell the people it's dangerous now? What should they do about the danger? And you say, I take no responsibility.
Let me talk about your two.
Excuse me, I take full responsibility. It's not my fault that it came here. It's China's fault. And you know what? It's not Joe's fault that it came here either. It's China's fault. They kept it from going into the rest of China for the most part, but they didn't keep it from coming out to the world, including Europe and ourselves.
Vice President Biden.
The fact is that when we knew it was coming, when it hit, what happened? What did the president say? He said, don't worry, it's going to go away. Be gone by Easter. Don't worry. The warm weather. Don't worry. Maybe inject bleach. He said he was kidding when he said that, but a lot of people thought it was serious. A whole range of things the president has said. Even today, he thinks we are in control. We're about to lose 200,000 more people.
President Trump.
Look, perhaps just to finish this, I was kidding on that, but just to finish this, when I closed, he said I shouldn't have closed. And that went on for months. Nancy Pelosi said the same thing. She was dancing on the streets in Chinatown in San Francisco. But when I closed, he said, this is a terrible thing. You're xenophobic. I think he called me racist even. And because I was closing it to China. Now he says I should have closed it earlier. It just, Joe, it doesn't work.
I didn't say either of those things.
You certainly did.
You certainly did. I talked about a xenophobia in a different context. It wasn't about closing the border to Chinese coming to the United States.
All right, I want to talk about both of your different strategies to handling
He thought
this.
I shouldn't have closed the border.
Well,
that's obvious.
Do you want to respond to that quickly, Vice President
No.
Biden? Okay. Let's talk about your different strategies toward dealing with this. Mr. Vice President, you suggested you would support new shutdowns if scientists recommended it. What do you say to Americans who are fearful that the cost of shutdowns, the impact on the economy, the higher rates of hunger, depression, domestic and substance abuse outweighs the risk of exposure to the virus?
What I would say is I'm going to shut down the virus, not the country. It's his ineptitude that caused the country to have to shut down in large part. Why businesses have gone under, why schools are closed, why so many people have lost their living, and why they're concerned. Those other concerns are real. That's why he should have been, instead of in a sand trap in his golf course, he should have been negotiating with Nancy Pelosi and the rest of the Democrats and Republicans about what to do about the acts they were passing for billions of dollars to make sure people had the capacity.
But you haven't ruled out more shutdowns.
Well, no, I'm not shutting down the nation, but there are, look, you need standards. The standard is if you have a reproduction rate in a community that's above a certain level, everybody says, slow up, more social distancing, do not open bars and do not open gymnasiums, do not open until you get this under control, under more control. But when you do open, give the people the capacity to be able to open and have the capacity to do it safely. For example, schools. Schools, they need a lot of money to open. They need to deal with ventilation systems. They need to deal with smaller classes, more teachers, more pods. And he's refused to support that money, or at least up to now.
Let's talk about schools. President Trump,
I think we have to respond, if I might.
Please, and then I have a follow-up.
Thank you, and I appreciate that. Look, all he does is talk about shutdowns, but forget about him. His Democrat governors, Cuomo in New York, you look at what's going on in California, you look at Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Democrats all, they're shut down so tight and they're dying. They're dying. And he supports all these people. All he talks about is shutdowns. No, we're not going to shut down, and we have to open our schools. And it's like, as an example, I have a young son. He also tested positive. By the time I spoke to the doctor the second time, he was fine. It just went away. Young people, I guess it's their immune system.
Let me follow up with you, President Trump. You've demanded schools open in person and insist they can do it safely. But just yesterday, Boston became the latest city to move its public school system entirely online after a coronavirus spike. What is your message to parents who worry that sending their children to school will endanger not only their kids, but also their teachers and families?
I want to open the schools. The transmittal rate to the teachers is very small, but I want to open the schools. We have to open our country. We're not going to have a country. You can't do this. We can't keep this country closed. This is a massive country with a massive economy. People are losing their jobs. They're committing suicide. There's depression, alcohol, drugs at a level that nobody's ever seen before. There's abuse, tremendous abuse. We have to open our country. You know, I've said it often. The cure cannot be worse than the problem itself. And that's what's happening. And he wants to close down. He'll close down the country if one person in our massive bureaucracy says we should close it down.
Vice President Biden, your response.
Simply not true. We ought to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time. We ought to be able to safely open, but when they need resources to open. You need to be able to, for example, if you're going to open a business, have social distancing within the business. You need to have, if you have a restaurant, you need to have plexiglass dividers so people cannot infect one another. You need to be in a position where you can take testing rapidly and know whether a person is in fact infected. You need to be able to trace. You need to be able to provide all the resources that are needed to do this. And that is not inconsistent with saying that we're going to make sure that we open safely. And by the way, all you teachers out there, not that many of you are going to die, so don't worry about it. Come on.
President Trump, let me follow up with you quickly.
By the way, I will say this. If you go and look at what's happened to New York, it's a ghost town. It's a ghost town. And when you talk about plexiglass, these are restaurants that are dying. These are businesses with no money. Putting up plexiglass is unbelievably expensive, and it's not the answer. I mean, you're going to sit there in a cubicle wrapped around with plastic. These are businesses that are dying, Joe. You can't do that to people. You just can't. Take a look at New York and what's happened to my wonderful city for so many years. I loved it. It was vibrant. It's dying. Everyone's leaving New York.
Take a look at what New York has done in terms of turning the curve down in terms of the number of people dying. And I don't look at this in terms of the way he does. Blue states and red states. They're all the United States. And look at the states that are having such a spike in the coronavirus. They're the red states. They're the states in the Midwest. They're the states in the upper Midwest. That's where the spike is occurring significantly. But they're all Americans. They're all Americans. And what we have to do is say, wear these masks, number one. Make sure we get the help that the businesses need that has money's already been passed to do that. It's been out there since the beginning of the summer, and nothing's happened.
President, New York has lost more than 40,000 people, 11,000 people in nursing homes.
President Trump, what
about... When you say spike, take a look at what's happening in Pennsylvania, where they've had it closed. Take a look at what's happening with your friend in Michigan, where her husband's the only one allowed to do anything. It's been like a prison. Now, it was just ruled unconstitutional. Take a look at North Carolina. They're having spikes, and they've been closed. And they're getting killed financially. We can't let that happen, Joe. You can't let that happen. We have to open up. And we understand the disease. We have to protect our seniors. We have to protect our elderly. We have to protect especially our seniors with heart problems and diabetes problems. And we will protect them. We have the best testing in the world by far. That's why we have so many cases.
Let me follow up with you before we move on to our next section. President Trump, this week you called Dr. Anthony Fauci, the nation's best-known infectious disease expert, quote, a disaster. You described him and other medical experts as, quote, idiots. If you're not listening to them, who are you listening to as you fight this?
I'm listening to all of them, including Anthony. I get along very well with Anthony. But he did say, don't wear masks. He did say, as you know, this is not going to be a problem. I think he's a Democrat, but that's okay. He said, this is not going to be a problem. We are not going to have a problem at all. When Joe says that, I said, Anthony Fauci said, and others, and many others, and I'm not knocking him a lot. Nobody knew. Look, nobody knew what this thing was. Nobody knew where it was coming from, what it was. We've learned a lot. But Anthony said, don't wear masks. Now he wants to wear masks. Anthony also said, if you look back, exact words, here's his exact words. This is no problem. This is going to go away soon. So he's allowed to make mistakes. He happens to be a good person.
Vice President Biden, your response quickly, and then we're going to move on to the next section.
My response is that think about what the president knew in January and didn't tell the American people. He was told this was a serious virus that spread in the air, and it was much worse than the flu. He went on record and said to one of your colleagues, recorded, that in fact he knew how dangerous it was, but he didn't want to tell us. He didn't want to tell us because he didn't want us to panic. He didn't want us. Americans don't panic. He panicked. But guess what? In the meantime, we found out in the New York Times the other day that, in fact, his folks went to Wall Street and said this is a really dangerous thing. And a memo out of that meeting, not from his administration, but from some of the brokers, said sell short because we got to get moving. It's a dangerous problem.
Well, this is
I'm going to give you 30 seconds to respond, and then we're going to move on.
The Wall Street one, I don't know. Somebody went to Wall Street. You're the one that takes all the money from Wall Street. I don't take it. You have raised a lot of money, tremendous amounts of money. And every time you raise money, deals are made, Joe. I could raise so much more money as president and as somebody that knows most of those people. I could call the heads of Wall Street, the heads of every company in America. I would blow away every record, but I don't want to do that because it puts me in a bad position. And then you bring up Wall Street. You shouldn't be bringing up Wall Street because you're the one that takes the money from Wall Street, not me. I could blow away your records that, like you wouldn't believe. We don't need money. We have plenty of money. In fact, we beat Hillary Clinton with a tiny fraction of the money that she was able to.
All right, gentlemen, we're going to move on.
Don't tell me about Wall Street.
Average contribution, $43.
All right, we're going to move on to our next section, which is national security. And I do want to start with the security of our elections and some breaking news from overnight. Just last night, top intelligence officials confirmed again that both Russia and Iran are working to influence this election. Both countries have obtained U.S. voter registration information, these officials say, and Iran sent intimidating messages to Florida voters. This question goes to you, Mr. Vice President. What would you do to put an end to this threat? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
I made it clear, and I ask everyone else to take the pledge. I made it clear that any country, no matter who it is, that interferes in American elections will pay a price. They will pay a price. And it's been overwhelmingly clear this election, I won't even get into the last one, this election, that Russia has been involved, China has been involved to some degree, and now we learn that Iran is involved. They will pay a price if I'm elected. They're interfering with American sovereignty. That's what's going on right now. They're interfering with American sovereignty. And to the best of my knowledge, I don't think the president said anything to Putin about it. I don't think he's talked with them a lot. I don't think he said a word. I don't know why he hadn't said a word to Putin about it. And I don't know what he has recently said, if anything, to the Iranians. My guess is he'd probably be more outspoken with regard to the Iranians. But the point is this, folks. We are in a situation where we have foreign countries trying to interfere in the outcome of our election. His own national security advisor told him that what is happening with his buddy, I will. His buddy, Rudy Giuliani, he's being used as a Russian pawn. He's being fed information that is Russian, that is not true. And then what happens? Nothing happens. And then you find out that everything that's going on here about Russia is wanting to make sure that I do not get elected the next president of the United States because they know I know them and they know me. I don't understand why this president is unwilling to take on Putin when he's actually paying bounties to kill American soldiers in Afghanistan, when he's engaged in activities that are trying to destabilize all of NATO. I don't know why he doesn't do it, but it's worth asking the question, why isn't that being done? Any country that interferes with us will, in fact, pay a price because they're affecting our sovereignty.
President Trump, same question to you. Let me ask the question. You're going to have 2 minutes to respond. For 2 elections in a row now, there has been substantial interference from foreign adversaries. What would you do in your next term to put an end to this? 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Well, let me respond to the first part, as Joe answered. Joe got $3.5 million from Russia, and it came through Putin because he was very friendly with the former mayor of Moscow, and it was the mayor of Moscow's wife, and you got $3.5 million. Your family got $3.5 million, and you know, someday you're going to have to explain, why did you get 3.5? I never got any money from Russia. I don't get money from Russia. Now, about your thing last night, I knew all about that. And through John Ratcliffe, who is fantastic, DNI, he said, the one thing that's common to both of them, they both want you to lose, because there has been nobody tougher to Russia. Between the sanctions, nobody tougher than me on Russia. Between the sanctions, between all of what I've done with NATO, you know, I've got the NATO countries to put up an extra $130 billion, going to $420 billion a year. That's to guard against Russia. I sold, while he was selling pillows and sheets, I sold tank busters to Ukraine. There has been nobody tougher on Russia than Donald Trump. And I'll tell you, they were so bad. They took over the submarine port. You remember that very well. During your term, during you and Barack Obama, they took over a big part of what should have been Ukraine. You handed it to them, but you were getting a lot of money from Russia. They were paying you a lot of money, and they probably still are. But now, with what came out today, it's even worse. All of the emails, the horrible emails of the kind of money that you were raking in, you and your family. And Joe, you were vice president when some of this was happening, and it should have never happened. And I think you owe an explanation to the American people. Why is it? Somebody just had a news conference a little while ago who was essentially supposed to work with you and your family, but what he said was damning. And regardless of me, I think you have to clean it up and talk to the American people. Maybe you can do it right now.
Vice President Biden, you may respond. 30 seconds. And then I do want to follow up on the election security.
I have not taken a penny from any foreign source ever in my life. We learned that this president paid 50 times the tax in China, has a secret bank account with China, does business in China, and in fact is talking about me taking money. I have not taken a single penny from any country whatsoever, ever. Number one. Number two, this is a president, I have released all of my tax returns, 22 years. Go look at them. 22 years of my tax return. You have not released a single solitary year of your tax return. What are you hiding? Why are you unwilling? The foreign countries are paying you a lot. Russia's paying you a lot. China's paying you a lot. And your hotels and all your businesses all around the country, all around the world. And China's building a new road to a new a golf course you have overseas. So what's going on here? Why don't release your tax return or stop talking about corruption?
President Trump, your response.
First of all, I called my accountants under audit. I'm going to release them as soon as we can. I want to do it, and it'll show how successful, how great this company is. But much more importantly than that, people were saying $750. I asked them a week ago, I said, what did I pay? They said, sir, you prepaid tens of millions of dollars. I prepaid my tax. Tens over the last number of years. Tens of millions of dollars I prepaid, because at some point they think it's an estimate. They think I may have to pay tax. So I already prepaid it. Nobody told me that.
Did your accountant
Nobody
tell
told you that. Excuse
them?
me. And it wasn't written whenever they write this. They keep talking about $750, which I think is a filing fee. But let me just tell you, I prepaid millions and millions of dollars in taxes. Number one. Number two, I don't make money from China. You do. I don't make money from Ukraine. You do. I don't make money from Russia. You made $3.5 million, Joe, and your son gave you. They even have a statement that we have to give 10% to the big man. You're the big man, I think. I don't know. Maybe you're not, but you're the big man, I think. Your son said we have to give 10% to the big man. Joe, what's that all about? It's terrible.
All right, gentlemen, I want to ask you both some questions about all of this. But I'm going to let you both respond very quickly. You just said you spoke to your accountant about potentially releasing your taxes. Did he tell you when you can release them? Do you have a deadline for when you're going to release them to the American people?
I get treated worse than the Tea Party got treated. Because I have a lot of people in there, deep down in the IRS, they treat me horribly. We made a deal, it was all settled until I decide to run for president. I get treated very badly by the IRS, very unfairly. But we had a deal all done. As soon as we're completed with the deal, I want to release it. But I have paid millions and millions of dollars, and it's worse than paying. I paid in advance. It's called prepaying your taxes.
Okay.
I paid in advance.
I want to ask you both about questions regarding your potential foreign entanglements and questions that have been raised to give you both a chance to talk about this more broadly. Respond very quickly, and then I'll get to my question.
Why did he's been saying this for 4 years? Show us. Just show us. Stop playing around. You've been saying for 4 years you're going to reduce your taxes. Nobody knows it, Mr. President. What they do know is you're not paying your taxes, or you're paying taxes that are so low. When last time he said what he paid, he said, I only pay that little because I'm smart. I know how to game the system. Come on. Come on, folks.
So, President Trump, and then I want to get to two questions to both of you on this.
I was put through a phony witch hunt for 3 years. It started before I even got elected. They spied on my campaign. No president should ever have to go through what I went through. Let me just say this. Mueller and 18 angry Democrats and FBI agents all over the place spent $48 million. They went through everything I had, including my tax returns, and they found absolutely no collusion and nothing wrong. $48 million. I guarantee you, if I spent $1 million on you, Joe, I could find plenty wrong. Because the kind of things that you've done and the kind of monies that your family has taken, I mean, your brother made money in Iraq, millions of dollars. Your other brother made a fortune, and it's all through you, Joe. And they say you get some of it, and you do live very well. You have houses all over the place. You live very well.
All right, gentlemen, let me just ask some questions about all of this broadly. Vice President Biden, there have been questions about the work your son has done in China and for a Ukrainian energy company when you were vice president. In retrospect, was anything about those relationships inappropriate or unethical?
Nothing was unethical. Here's what the deal. With regard to Ukraine, we had this whole question about whether or not, because he was on the board, I later learned of a Burisma, a company, that somehow I had done something wrong. Yet every single solitary person, when he was going through his impeachment, testifying under oath who worked for him, said, I did my job impeccably. I carried out U.S. policy. Not one single solitary thing was out of line. Not a single thing, number one. Number two, the guy who got in trouble in Ukraine was this guy trying to bribe the Ukrainian government to say something negative about me, which they would not do and did not do because it never, ever, ever happened. My son has not made money in terms of this thing about, what are you talking about, China. I have not had, the only guy made money from China is this guy. He's the only one. Nobody else has made money from China.
President Trump, let me ask my question to you.
But could I just one thing?
Very quickly.
His son didn't have a job for a long time, was sadly no longer in the military service. I won't get into that. And he didn't have a job. As soon as he became vice president, Burisma, not the best reputation in the world. I hear they paid him $183,000 a month. Listen to this. $183, and they gave him a $3 million upfront payment.
All right.
And he had no energy.
I'm going to let the Vice President respond to that quickly, and then I need to get to a question to you. Very quickly.
No basis for that. Everybody investigated that. No one said anything he did was wrong in Ukraine.
Okay, President Trump, this is for you. Since you took office, you've never divested from your business. You've personally promoted your properties abroad. A report this week, which was referenced, does indicate that your company has a bank account in China. So how can voters know that you don't have any foreign conflicts of interest?
I have many bank accounts, and they're all listed, and they're all over the place. I mean, I was a businessman doing business. The bank account you're referring to, which is everybody knows about it, it's listed. The bank account was in 2013. That's what it was. It was opened it was closed in 2015, I believe. And then I decided, because I was thinking about doing a deal in China like millions of other people. I was thinking about it, and I decided I'm not going to do it. Didn't like it. I decided not to do it. Had an account open, and I closed it.
Okay.
Excuse me. And then, unlike him, where he's vice president and he does business, I then decided to run for president after that. That was before. So I closed it before I even ran for president, let alone became president. Big difference. He is the vice president of the United States, and his son, his brother, and his other brother are getting rich. They're like a vacuum cleaner. They're sucking up money every
President Trump,
place he
thank you.
goes.
We do need to move on. I do want to ask you, Vice President Biden, about China. Let's talk about China more broadly. There have, of course, President Trump has said that they should pay for not being fully transparent in regards to the coronavirus. If you were president, would you make China pay? And please be specific. What would that look like?
What I'd make China do is play by the international rules, not like he has done. He has caused the deficit of China to go up, not down, with China, up, not down. We are making sure that in order to do business in China, you have to give all your intellectual property. You have to have a partner in China. It's 51%. We would not do that at all, number one. Number two, we're in a situation where China would have to play by the rules internationally as well. When I met with Xi, when I was still vice president, he said we're setting up air identification zones in the South China Sea. You can't fly through them. I said we're going to fly through them. We just flew B-52, B-1 bombers through it. We're not going to pay attention. They have to play by the rules. And what's he do? He embraces guys like the thugs like in North Korea and the Chinese president and Putin and others, and he pokes his finger in the eye of all of our friends, all of our allies. We make up we're 25% of the world's economy. We need to be having the rest of our friends with us saying to China, these are the rules. You play by them or you're going to pay the price for not paying by them economically. That's the way I will run it. And that's what we did in upholding steel tariffs and a range of other things when we were president and vice president.
All right, let's talk about North Korea.
Excuse me, no, I have to respond to that.
Okay. Very quickly, and then we're going to move on to North Korea.
With $1.5 billion from China to manage after spending 10 minutes in office and being in Air Force Two, number one. Number two, there's a very strong email talking about your family wanting to make $10 million a year for introductions.
President Trump, on China policy, though, what specifically are you going to do? What specifically are you going to do to make China pay? You've said you're going to make them pay.
First of all, China is paying. They're paying billions and billions of dollars. I just gave $28 billion.
New sanctions?
I just gave $28 billion to our farmers.
Taxpayers' money.
It's what?
Taxpayers' money. Didn't come from China.
You know who the taxpayer is? It's called China. China paid $28 billion, and you know what they did to pay it, Joe? They devalued their currency, and they also paid up. And you know who got the money? Our farmers, our great farmers, because they were targeted. You never charged them anything. Also, I charged them 25% on dumped steel because they were killing our steel industry. We were not going to have a steel industry. Okay. And now we have a steel industry.
Okay, Vice President Biden, your response, please.
Our response is, look, this isn't about, there's a reason why he's bringing up all this malarkey. There's a reason for it. He doesn't want to talk about the substantive issues. It's not about his family and my family. It's about your family. And your family's hurting badly. If you're making less than, if you're a middle-class family, you're getting hurt badly right now. You're sitting at the kitchen table this morning deciding, well, we can't get new tires, they're bald because we have to wait another month or so. Or are we going to be able to pay the mortgage? Or who's going to tell her she can't go back to community college? They're the decisions you're making in the middle-class families like I grew up in Scranton and Claymont. They're in trouble. We should be talking about your families, but that's the last thing he wants to talk about.
I want to talk about North Korea. I do want to turn to 10 seconds, Mr. President. 10 seconds.
That's a typical political statement. Let's get off this China thing, and then he looks, the family, around the table, everything. Just a typical politician when I see that.
Let's talk about North Korea.
I'm not a typical politician.
Okay,
that's why I got elected. Let's get off the subject of China. Let's talk around sitting around the table.
All right.
Come on, Joe, you can do better.
We're going to talk about North Korea now. President Trump, you've met with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un 3 times. You've talked about your beautiful letters with him. You've touted the fact that there hasn't been a war or a long-range missile test. And yet North Korea recently rolled out its biggest ever intercontinental ballistic missile and continues to develop its nuclear arsenal. Do you see that as a betrayal of the relationship you forged? Just 30 seconds here because we need to get on to the next
one. So when I met with Barack Obama, we sat in the White House right at the beginning, had a great conversation. It was supposed to be 15 minutes, and it was well over an hour. He said the biggest problem we have with North Korea. He indicated we will be in a war with North Korea. Guess what? It would be a nuclear war, and he does have plenty of nuclear capability. In the meantime, I have a very good relationship with him. Different kind of a guy, but he probably thinks the same thing about me. We have a different kind of a relationship. We have a very good relationship, and there's no war. And, you know, about 2 months ago, he broke into a certain area. They said, oh, there's going to be trouble. I said, no, they're not, because he's not going to do that. And I was right. Look, instead of being in a war where millions of people, Seoul, you know, is 25 miles away, Millions and millions, 32 million people in Seoul. Millions of people would be
Okay.
dead right now.
President
we
Trump,
don't have
that's
a war,
30
and I have a
seconds.
good
Thank
relationship.
you. Vice President Biden, to you. North Korea conducted 4 nuclear tests under the Obama administration. Why do you think you would be able to rein in this persistent threat?
Because I'd make it clear, which we were making clear to China, they had to be part of the deal. Because here's I made it clear, and as a spokesperson of the administration when I went to China, that they said, why are you moving your missile defense up so close? Why are you moving more forces here? Why are you continuing to do military maneuvers with South Korea? I said, because North Korea is a problem, and we're going to continue to do it so we can control them. We're going to make sure we can control them and make sure they cannot hurt us. And so if you want to do something about it, step up and help. If not, it's going to continue. What has he done? He's legitimized North Korea. He's talked about his good buddy, who's a thug, and he talks about how we're better off. And they have much more capable missiles, able to reach U.S. territory much more easily than ever did before.
Let me follow up with you, Vice President Biden. You've said you wouldn't meet with Kim Jong-un without preconditions. Are there any conditions under which you would meet with him?
On the condition that he would agree that he would be drawing down his nuclear capacity to get that the Korean Peninsula should be a nuclear-free zone.
All right, let's move on to American families.
Kristen, they tried
Very
to
quickly,
meet with
10
him.
seconds, President.
They tried to meet with him. He wouldn't do it. He didn't like Obama. He didn't like him. He wouldn't do it.
Okay, I got to give him a chance to respond to that before we move on.
And that's okay. You know what, North Korea, we're not in a war. We have a good relationship. You know, people don't understand. Having a good relationship with leaders of other countries is a good thing.
We have a lot of questions to get to.
That's like saying we had a good relationship with Hitler before he, in fact, invaded Europe, the rest of Europe. Come on. The reason he would not meet with President Obama is because President Obama said, we're going to talk about denuclearization. We're not going to legitimize you, and we're going to continue to put stronger and stronger sanctions on you. That's why he wouldn't meet with us.
All right, let's move on. Let's move on and talk about American families.
He left me a mess, Kristen.
President Trump, okay, we do need to move on.
They left me a mess. North Korea was a mess. And in fact, if you remember the first 2 or 3 months, there was a very dangerous period in my first 3 months before we sort of worked things out a little bit.
Okay.
There was a they left us a mess. And Obama would be, I think, the first to say it was the single biggest problem he thought that our country had.
Okay, let's move on to American families and the economy. One of the issues that's most important to them is health care, as you both know. Today, there was a key vote on a new Supreme Court Justice, Amy Coney Barrett, and health care is at the center of her confirmation fight. Over 20 million Americans get their health insurance through the Affordable Care Act. It's headed to the Supreme Court, and your administration, Mr. President, is advocating for the court to overturn it. If the Supreme Court does overturn that law, those 20 million Americans could lose their health insurance almost overnight. So what would you do if those people have their health insurance taken away? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Sure. First of all, I've already done something that nobody thought was possible. Through the legislature, I terminated the individual mandate. That is the worst part of Obamacare, as we call it. The individual mandate where you have to pay a fortune for the privilege of not having to pay for bad health insurance. I terminated. It's gone. Now it's in court because Obamacare is no good. But then I made a decision. Run it as well as you can to my people, great people. Run it as well as you can. I could have gone the other route and made everybody very unhappy. They ran it. Premiums are down. Everything's down. Here's the problem. No matter how well you run it, it's no good. What we'd like to do is terminate it. We have the individual mandate done. I don't know that it's going to work. If we don't win, we will have to run it, and we'll have Obamacare, but it'll be better run. But it no longer is Obamacare, because without the individual mandate, it's much different. Pre-existing conditions will always stay. What I would like to do is a much better health care, much better, will always protect people with pre-existing. So I'd like to terminate Obamacare, come up with a brand new, beautiful health care. The Democrats will do it because there'll be tremendous pressure on them, and we might even have the House by that time, and I think we're going to win the House, okay? You'll see, but I think we're going to win the House. But come up with a better health care, always protecting people with pre-existing conditions. And one thing very important, we have 180 million people out there that have great private health care. Far more than we're talking about with Obamacare. Joe Biden is going to terminate all of those policies. These are people that love their health care, people that have been successful, middle-income people, been successful. They have 180 million plans, 180 million people, families, under what he wants to do, which will basically be socialized medicine. He won't even have a choice. They want to terminate 180 million plans. We have done an incredible job on health care, and we're going to do even better.
Okay, Vice President Biden, yes, this is for you. Your health care plan calls for building on Obamacare. So my question is, what is your plan if the law is ruled unconstitutional by the Supreme Court? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
What I'm going to do is pass Obamacare with a public option. It'll become Biden care. The public option is an option that says that if you, in fact, do not have the wherewithal if you qualify for Medicaid and you do not have the wherewithal in your state to get Medicaid, you automatically are enrolled, providing competition for insurance companies. That's what's going to happen. Secondly, we're going to make sure we reduce the premiums and reduce drug prices by making sure that there's competition that doesn't exist now by allowing the Medicare to negotiate drug prices with the insurance companies. Thirdly, the idea that I want to eliminate private insurance, the reason why I had such a fight with 20 candidates for the nomination was I support private insurance. That's why not one single person with private insurance would lose their insurance under my plan, nor did they under Obamacare. They did not lose their insurance unless they chose they wanted to go to something else. Lastly, we're going to make sure we're in a situation that we actually protect pre-existing. There's no way he can protect pre-existing conditions. None. Zero. You can't do it in the ether. He's been talking about this for a long time. He's never come up with a plan. I guess we're going to get the pre-existing condition plan the same time we get the infrastructure plan that we've been waiting since 17, 18, 19, and 20. The fact, I still have a few more minutes. I know you're getting anxious. The fact is that he's already cost the American people, because of his terrible handling of the COVID virus and the economic spillover, 10 million people have lost their private insurance. And he wants to take away 22 million more people who have it under Obamacare, and over 110 million people with pre-existing conditions. And all the people from COVID are going to have pre-existing conditions. What are they going to do?
I have a follow-up for you, Vice President Biden. It relates to something that President Trump said. He's accusing you of wanting socialized medicine. What do you say to people who have concerns that your health care plan, which includes a government insurance option, takes the country one step closer to a health care system run entirely by the government? What's your response to them? I say
it's ridiculous. It's like saying that, the idea that the fact that there's a public option that people can choose, that makes it a socialist plan. Look, the difference between the president, I think health care is not a privilege, it's a right. Everyone should have the right to have affordable health care. And I am very proud of my plan. It's gotten endorsed by all the major labor unions, as well as a whole range of other people who, in fact, are concerned in the medical field. This is something that's going to save people's lives, and this is going to give some people an opportunity to have health care for their children. How many of you home are worried and rolling around in bed tonight wondering what in God's name you're going to do if you get sick because you've lost your home insurance, your health insurance, your company's gone under? We have to provide health insurance for people at an affordable rate, and that's what I do.
President Trump,
excuse me, he was there for 47 years. He didn't do it. He was now there as vice president for 8 years, and it's not like it was 25 years ago. It was 3 3/4. It was just a little while ago, right? Less than 4 years ago. He didn't do anything. He didn't do it. He wants socialized medicine, and it's not that he wants it. His vice president, she is more liberal than Bernie Sanders and wants it even more. Bernie Sanders wants it. The Democrats want it. You're going to have socialized medicine, just like you went with fracking. We're not going to have fracking. We're going to stop fracking. We're going to stop fracking. Then he goes to Pennsylvania after he gets a nomination, where he got very lucky to get it. And he goes to Pennsylvania and he says, oh, we're going to have fracking. And you never asked that question. And by the way, so far, I respect very much the way you're handling this, I have to say.
By the way.
But somebody should ask the question.
You can ask.
He goes for a year. There will be no fracking.
We have a number of topics we're going to get to.
That's a big question.
We're going to get to.
It's the same thing with socialized medicine.
I have to respond.
Vice President, your response, please.
My response is people deserve to have affordable health care, period. Period, period, period. And the Biden care proposal will, in fact, provide for that affordable health care, lower premiums. What we're going to do is going to cost some money. It's going to cost over $750 billion over 10 years to do it. And they're going to have lower premiums. You can buy into the better plans, the cheaper plans, lower your premiums, deal with unexpected billing, and have your drug prices drop significantly. He keeps talking about it. He hasn't done a thing for anybody on health care. Not a thing.
Tristan, when
Very
he
quickly,
says,
then I want to talk
when
about
he
what's
says
happening
public
on Capitol
option,
Hill.
he's talking about socialized medicine, and when he and healthcare. When he talks about a public option, he's talking about destroying your Medicare, totally destroyed, and destroying your Social Security, and this whole country will come down. You know, Bernie Sanders tried it in his state. He tried it in his state. His governor was a very liberal governor. They wanted to make it work.
Okay, let's let Vice President Biden respond.
It doesn't
Vice
work.
President
He's
Biden,
a very
your
confused
response.
guy. He thinks he's running against somebody else. He's running against Joe Biden. I beat all those other people because I disagreed with them. Joe Biden he's running against. And the idea that we're in a situation that they're going to destroy Medicare, this is the guy that the actuary at Medicare said, if in fact, at Social Security, if in fact he continues to withhold his plan to withhold the tax on Social Security will be bankrupt by 2023 with no way to make up for it. This is the guy who's tried to cut Medicare. So no, I mean, the idea that Donald Trump is lecturing me on Social Security and Medicare? Come on.
He tried to get
10
rid of
seconds,
he
Mr.
tried to hurt
President, and then I
Social
have to go to
Security
another
years
question.
ago. Years ago. Go back and look at the records. He tried to hurt Social Security years ago.
All
One
right,
thing,
let's move
but
on.
this
I'm
is
going to
the
move
guy
on.
that
Let me,
when they
Mr.
announced
President, I have
last
to move on
week,
to the next question.
They said
or
the
else
stock
we're not
market
going to have
will
time to
boom
talk about it.
if I'm elected. If he's elected, the stock market will crash.
Okay, let's
The biggest
move on to the
analysts are
next
saying that.
question.
Let me respond.
Very quickly.
Look, the idea that the stock market is booming is his only measure of what's happening. Where I come from in Scranton and Claremont, the people don't live off of the stock market. Just in the last three years during this crisis, the billionaires in this country made, according to the Wall Street, $700 billion more dollars. $700 billion more dollars. Because that's his only measure. What happens to the ordinary people out there? What happens to them?
Let's talk about what's happening on Capitol Hill. We're going to move on,
401ks are through the roof.
We're going to move on.
Stock are through the roof.
All right.
And he doesn't come from Scranton. That's like he lived there for a short period of time before he even knew it.
We're going to move on to
and
the
he
next
left.
question.
And the people of Pennsylvania
Let me
will
move
show
on
you
to my
that.
next question,
They
gentlemen.
understand.
As of tonight, more than 12 million people are out of work. And as of tonight, 8 million more Americans have fallen into poverty, and more families are going hungry every day. Those hit hardest are women and people of color. They see Washington fighting over a relief bill. Mr. President, why haven't you been able to get them the help they need? 30 seconds here.
Because Nancy Pelosi doesn't want to approve it. I do.
But you're the president.
I do, but I still have to get. Unfortunately, that's one of the reasons I think we're going to take over the House, because of her. Nancy Pelosi doesn't want to approve anything because she'd love to have some victories on a date called November 3rd. Nancy Pelosi does not want to approve it. We are ready, willing, and able to do something. Don't forget, we've already approved 3 plans, and it's gone through, including the Democrats, in all fairness. This one she doesn't want. It's near the election because she thinks it helps her politically. I think it hurts her politically.
All right, Mr. Vice President.
The Republican leader in the United States Senate said he can't pass it. He will not be able to pass it. He does not have Republican votes. Why isn't he talking to his Republican friends?
Let me follow up with you, Vice President
we made a
Biden,
deal, the
because
Republicans
let me
will
ask
pass
Vice
it.
President Biden a question. You are the leader of the Democratic Party. Why have you not pushed the Democrats to get a deal for the American people?
Well, I have, and they have pushed it. Look, they passed this act all the way back in the beginning of the summer. This is like it's not new. It's been out there. This HEROES Act has been sitting there. And look at what's happening. When I was in charge of the Recovery Act with $800 billion, I was able to get $145 billion to local communities that have to balance their budgets and states that have to balance their budgets. So they didn't have to fire firefighters, teachers, first responders, law enforcement officers, so they could keep their cities and counties running. He will not support that. They have not done a thing for them. And Mitch McConnell said, let them go bankrupt. Let them go bankrupt. Come on. What's the matter with these guys?
The bill that was passed in the House was a bailout of badly run, high-crime, Democrat, all run by Democrats, cities and states. It was a way of getting a lot of money, billions and billions of dollars to these kids. It was also a way of getting a lot of money from our people's pockets to people that come into our country illegally. We were going to take care of everything for them. And what that does, and I'd love to do that, I'd love to help them, but what that does, everybody all over the world will start pouring into our country. We can't do it. This was a way of taking care of them. This was a way of spending on things that had nothing to do with COVID, as per your question. But it was really a big bailout for badly run Democrat cities and states.
All right, I want to.
If I get elected, I'm running as a proud Democrat, but I'm going to be an American president. I don't see red states and blue states. What I see is American, United States. And folks, every single state out there finds themselves in trouble. They're going to start laying off, whether they're red or blue, cops, firefighters, first responders, because teachers, because they have to balance their budget. And the founders were smart. They allowed the federal government to deficit spend to compensate for the United States of America.
I want to talk about the minimum wage, gentlemen. Mr. Vice President, we are talking a lot about struggling small businesses and business owners these days. Do you think this is the right time to ask them to raise the minimum wage? You, of course, support a $15 federal minimum wage.
I do, because I think one of the things we're going to have to do is we're going to have to bail them out, too. We should be bailing them out now, those small businesses. You got 1 in 6 of them going under. They're not going to be able to make it back. They passed a package that allows us to be able to call PPP. Money is supposed to go to help them do everything from organize how they can deal with their businesses being open safely. Schools, how they can make classrooms smaller, how they can hire more teachers, how they can put ventilation systems in. They need the help. The businesses as well as the schools need the help. But these guys will not help them. Is not giving them any of the money.
We are going to move on to immigration,
one thing very quickly,
but I want to get your reaction.
we have to help our small businesses by raising the minimum wage. That's not helping. I think it should be a state option. Alabama is different than New York. New York is different from Vermont. Every state is different. It should be a state option.
You said very recently.
We have to help. It's very important. We have to help our small businesses. How are you helping your small businesses when you're forcing wages? What's going to happen, and what's been proven to happen, is when you do that, these small businesses fire many of their employees.
You said very recently you would consider raising the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour. You said recently you would consider raising the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour. Is that still the case?
And I would consider it to an extent, but what I really like, in a second administration, but not to a level that's going to put all these businesses out of business. It should be a state option. Look, I've lived in different places. I know different places. They're all different. Some places, $15 is not so bad. In other places, other states, $15 would be
Okay, President Trump, thank you. Quick response, Vice President Biden.
2 jobs, 1 job, be below poverty. People are making $6, $7, $8 an hour. These first responders, we all clap for as they come down the street because they've allowed us to make it. What's happening? They deserve a minimum wage of $15. Anything below that puts you below the poverty level. And there is no evidence that when you raise the minimum wage, businesses go out of business. That is simply not true.
We're going to talk about immigration. We're going to talk about immigration now, gentlemen, and we're going to talk about families within this context. Mr. President, your administration separated children from their parents at the border, at least 4,000 kids. You've since reversed your zero-tolerance policy, but the United States can't locate the parents of more than 500 children. So how will these families ever be reunited?
Children are brought here by coyotes and lots of bad people, cartels, and they're brought here, and they used to use them to get into our country. We now have as strong a border as we've ever had. We're over 400 miles of brand new wall. You see the numbers, and we let people in, but they have to come in legally, and they come in through merit.
But how will you reunite these kids with their families,
Let me just tell you,
Mr. President?
they built cages. You know, they used to say, I built the cages, and then they had a picture in a certain newspaper, and it was a picture of these horrible cages, and they said, look at these cages. President Trump built them, and then it was determined they were built in 2014. That was him.
Do you have a plan to reunite the kids?
Yes, we're working on it we're trying very hard. But a lot of these kids come out without the parents. They come over through cartels and through coyotes and through gangs.
Vice President Biden, let me bring you into this conversation. Quick response and then another question to you.
These 500 plus kids came with parents. They separated them at the border to make it a disincentive to come to begin with. big, real tough. We're really strong. And guess what? They cannot, it's not coyotes didn't bring them over. Their parents were with them. They got separated from their parents. And it makes us a laughing stock and violates every notion of who we are as a nation.
Let me ask you a follow-up question.
They did it. We changed the policy.
Your response to that?
They did it. We changed.
Did not.
They built the cages. Who built the cages, Joe?
Let's talk about what
Who
we're
built the
talking about.
cages,
Let's
Joe?
talk about what we're talking about. What happened? Parents were ripped, their kids were ripped from their arms and separated. And now they cannot find over 500 sets of those parents, and those kids are alone. Nowhere to go. Nowhere to go. It's criminal. It's criminal.
Let me ask
Kristen,
you about
I will say this. They went down. We brought reporters, everything. They are so well taken care of. They're in facilities that were so clean.
But some of them haven't been reunited
But
with
just
their
ask
families.
one question. Who built the cages? I'd love you to ask him that. Who built the cages?
Let me ask about your immigration policy, Mr. Vice President. The Obama administration did fail to deliver immigration reform, which had been a key promise during the administration. It also presided over record deportations as well as family detentions at the border before changing course. So why should voters trust you with an immigration overhaul now?
Because it made a mistake. It took too long to get it right. It took too long to get it right. I'll be president of the United States, not vice president of the United States. And the fact is, I've made it very clear. Within 100 days, I'm going to send to the United States Congress a pathway to citizenship for over 11 million undocumented people. And all of those so-called dreamers, those DACA kids, they're going to be immediately certified again to be able to stay in this country and put on a path to citizenship. The idea that they are being sent home by this guy, and they want to do that, is they've gone to a country they've never seen before. I can imagine you're 5 years old, your parents are taking you across the Rio Grande River, and it's illegal. And you say, oh, no, Mom, leave me here. I'm not going to go with you. They've been here. Many of them are model citizens. Over 20,000 of them are first responders out there taking care of people during this crisis. We owe them. We owe them.
Kristen, he had 8 years to do what he said he was going to do. And I've changed without having a specific. We got rid of catch and release. We got rid of a lot of horrible things that they put in and that they lived with. But he had 8 years he was vice president. He did nothing except build cages to keep children in.
Vice President Biden, your response.
The catch and release, you know what he's talking about there? If, in fact, you had a family came across and they were arrested, they, in fact, were given a date to show up for their hearing. They were released. And guess what? They showed up for a hearing. And this is the first president in the history of the United States of America that anybody seeking asylum has to do it in another country. That's never happened before in America. That's never happened before in America. You come to the United States and you make your case that I seek asylum based on the following premise, why I deserve it under American law. They're sitting in squalor on the other side of the river.
President Trump, your response,
So
30 seconds, and then we'll move on.
It just shows that he has no understanding of immigration or the laws. Catch and release is a disaster. A murderer would come in, a rapist would come in, a very bad person would come in. We would take their name. We have to release them into our country. And then you say they come back. Less than 1% of the people come back. We have to send ICE out and Border Patrol out to find them. We would say, come back in 2 years, 3 years. We're going to give you a court case. You need Perry Mason. We're going to give you a court case. When you say they come back, they don't come back, Joe. They never come back. Only the really, I hate to say this, but those with the lowest IQ, they might come back.
Okay, President Trump, let's give Vice President Biden a chance to respond, and then we're going to move on to the next section.
You don't know the law, Joe.
Vice President Biden, your response.
Know the law, what he's telling you is simply not true.
Well, check it out. They don't come back.
Check it out.
All right, let's move on.
But we don't have to worry about it because they terminated it, so we don't have to worry about it
Let's
anymore.
move on to the next
And you have
section.
525 kids not knowing where in God's name they're going to be and lost their parents.
Go ahead.
All right. Let's talk about our next section, which is race in America. And I want to talk about the way Black and brown Americans experience race in this country. Part of that experience is something called the talk. It happens regardless of class and income. Parents who feel they have no choice but to prepare their children for the chance that they could be targeted, including by the police, for no reason other than the color of their skin. Mr. Vice President, in the next 2 minutes, I want you to speak directly to these families. Do you understand why these parents fear for their children?
I do. I do. You know, my daughter is a social worker, and she's written a lot about this. She has a graduate degree from the University of Pennsylvania in social work. And, you know, one of the reasons why I ended up working on the east side of Wilmington, Delaware, which is 90% African American, was to learn more about what was going on. What I never had to tell my daughter, if she's pulled over, make sure she puts, for a traffic stop, put both hands on top of the wheel and don't reach for the glove box because someone may shoot you. But a black parent, no matter how wealthy or how poor they are, has to teach their child when you're walking down the street, don't have a hoodie on when you go across the street. Making sure that you, in fact, if you get pulled over, just yes, sir, no, sir, hands on top of the wheel, because you are, in fact, the victim, whether you're a person making child of a $300,000 a year person or someone who's on food stamps. The fact of the matter is there is institutional racism in America. And we have always said, we've never lived up to it, that we hold these truths to be self-evident. All men and women are created equal. Well, guess what? We have never, ever lived up to it, but we've always constantly been moving the needle further and further to inclusion, not exclusion. This is the first president to come along and says, that's the end of that. We're not going to do that anymore. We have to provide for economic opportunity, better education, better health care, better access to schooling, better access to opportunity to borrow money to start businesses. All the things we can do, and I've laid out a clear plan as to how to do those things, just to give people a shot. It's about accumulating the ability to have wealth as well as it is to be free from violence.
President Trump, same question to you, and let me remind you of the question. I would like you to speak directly to these families. Do you understand why these parents fear for their children?
Yes, I do. And again, he's been in government 47 years. He never did a thing except in 1994 when he did such harm to the black community. And they were called, and he called them super predators. And he said that. He said it, super predators. And they have never lived that down. 1994, your crime bill, the super predators. Nobody has done more for the black community than Donald Trump. And if you look, with the exception of Abraham Lincoln, possible exception, but the exception of Abraham Lincoln, nobody has done what I've done. Criminal justice reform, Obama and Joe didn't do it. I don't even think they tried because they had no chance at doing it. They might have wanted to do it, but if you had to see the arms I had to twist to get that done, it was not a pretty picture, and everybody knows it, including some very liberal people that cried in my office. They cried in the Oval Office. 2 weeks later, they're out saying, gee, we have to defeat him. Criminal justice reform, prison reform, opportunity zones with Tim Scott, a great senator from South Carolina. He came in with this incredible idea for opportunity zones. It's one of the most successful programs. People don't talk about it. Tremendous investment is being made. Biggest beneficiary, the black and Hispanic communities, and then historically black colleges and universities. After 3 years of coming to the office, I love some of those guys. They were great. They came into the office and they said, I said, what are you doing? After 3 years, I said, why do you keep coming back? Because we have no funding. I said, you don't have to come back every year. We have to come back because President Obama would never give them long-term funding, and I did. 10-year long-term funding, and I gave them more money than they asked for because they said, I think you need more. And I said, the only bad part about this is I may never see you again because I got very friendly with them, and they like me and I like them. But I saved historically black colleges and universities.
Okay, and we're going to talk about both of your records, but your response to that, Vice President?
My response to that is I never, ever said what he accused me of saying. The fact of the matter is, in 2000, though, after the crime bill had been in the law for a while, this is the guy who said, the problem with the crime bill, there's not enough people in jail. There's not enough people in jail. And go on my website, get the quote, the date when he said it. Not enough people. He talked about marauding gangs, young gangs, and the people who are going to maraud our cities. This is a guy who in the Central Park five innocent black kids, he continued to push for making sure that they got the death penalty. None of them were guilty of the crimes they were suggested. Look, and talk about granted, he did in fact let 20 people, he commuted 20 people's sentences. We commuted over 1,000 people's sentences. Over 1,000. The very law he's talking about is a law that, in fact, initiated by Barack Obama. And secondly, we're in a situation here where the federal prison system was reduced by 38,000 people under our administration. And one of these things we should be doing, there should be no minimum mandatories in the law. That's why I'm offering $20 billion to states to change their state laws to eliminate minimum mandatories and set up drug courts. No one should be going to jail because they have a drug problem. They should be going to rehabilitation, not to jail. We should fundamentally change the system, and that's what I'm going to do.
But why didn't he do it 4 years ago? Why didn't you do that 4 years ago, even less than that? Why didn't you do it? You were vice president. You keep talking about all these things you're going to do and you're going to do this, but you were there just a short time ago and you guys did nothing.
We did.
You know, Joe, I ran because of you. I ran because of Barack Obama, because you did a poor job. If I thought you did a good job, I would have never run. I would have never run. I ran because of you. I'm looking at you now. You're a politician. I ran because of you.
All right, Vice President Biden, your response to that, and then I do have some questions for both of you.
Well, I tell you what, I hope he does look at me, because what's happening here is, you know who I am, you know who he is, you know his character, you know my character, you know our reputations for honor and telling the truth. I am anxious to have this race. I am anxious to see this take place. The character of the country is on the ballot. Our character is on the ballot. Look at us closely.
Let me ask some follow-up.
Excuse me.
Please respond, and then we're going to have follow-up
questions. If this stuff is true about Russia, Ukraine, China, other countries, Iraq, if this is true, then he's a corrupt politician.
All right.
So don't give me the stuff about how you're this innocent baby. Joe, they're calling you a corrupt politician.
Nobody.
President Trump, I want to stay on the issue of race. We're talking about the issue.
Laptop from hell.
President Trump, we're talking about race right now, and I do want to stay on the issue of race. President Trump,
I have to respond to that.
Please.
Because look,
very quickly.
There are 50 former national intelligence folks who said that what he's accusing me of is a Russian plant. They have said that this has all the five former heads of the CIA, both parties, say what he's saying is a bunch of garbage. Nobody believes it except his and his good friend Rudy Giuliani.
You mean the laptop is now another Russia hoax?
And that's exactly what.
Is this where you're going? This is where he's going. The laptop is Russia,
Gentlemen,
Russia.
I want to stay on the issue of race.
You have to be kidding. Here we go again with Russia.
We're going to continue on the issue of race. Mr. President, you've described the Black Lives Matter movement as a symbol of hate. You've shared a video of a man chanting white power to millions of your supporters. You've said that black professional athletes exercising their First Amendment rights should be fired. What do you say to Americans who say that kind of language from a president is contributing to a climate of hate and racial strife?
Well, you have to understand, the first time I ever heard of Black Lives Matter, they were chanting pigs in a blanket, talking about police. Pigs, talking about our police. Pigs in a blanket, fry them like bacon. I said, that's a horrible thing. And they were marching down the street. And that was my first glimpse of Black Lives Matter. I thought it was a terrible thing. As far as my relationships with all people, I think I have great relationships with all people. I am the least racist person in this room.
Well, what do you say to Americans who are concerned by that rhetoric?
I don't know. I don't know what to say. I got criminal justice reform done and prison reform and opportunity zones. I took care of black colleges and universities. I don't know what to say. They can say anything. They can say anything. It makes me sad because I am the least racist person. I can't even see the audience because it's so dark. But I don't care who's in the audience. I'm the least racist person in this room.
Okay. Vice President Biden, let me ask you very quickly, and then I have a follow-up question for you.
Abraham Lincoln here is one of the most racist presidents we've had in modern history. He pours fuel on every single racist fire. Every single one. He started off his campaign coming down the escalator saying he's going to get rid of those Mexican rapists. He's banned Muslims because they're Muslims. He has moved around and made everything worse across the board. He says about the poor boys, last time we were on stage here, he said, I told them to stand down and stand ready. Come on. This guy is a dog whistle about as big as a foghorn.
President Trump, I'm going to give you 10 seconds to respond, and then I have a follow-up.
You made a reference to Abraham Lincoln. Where did that come in? I mean,
You said you're Abraham Lincoln.
No, where did that? No.
You said,
I said not since Abraham Lincoln has anybody done what I've done for the black community.
And I'm saying,
I didn't say I'm Abraham Lincoln. I said not since Abraham Lincoln has anybody done what I've done for the black community. Now, you have done nothing other than the crime bill, which put
oh, God,
tens of thousands of black men, mostly, in jail.
All right, let me
and you know
let
what?
me
They
ask
remember
Vice
it
President
because if you
Biden
look
a
at what's
question.
happening with the voting right now,
Let me ask
they
Vice
remember
President
that
Biden
you treated them
about
very, very badly. Just
the-
take a look at what's happening out there.
Vice President Biden, let me give you a chance to respond within this context. Crime bills that you supported in the 80s and 90s contributed to the incarceration of tens of thousands of young black men who had small amounts of drugs in their possession. They are sons, they are brothers, they're fathers, they're uncles, whose families are still to this day, some of them suffering the consequences. So speak to those families. Why should they vote for you?
one of the things is that in the 80s, we passed 100%, all 100 senators voted for it, a bill on drugs and how to deal with drugs. It was a mistake. I've been trying to change the sense, and particularly the portion on cocaine. That's why I've been arguing that, in fact, we should not send anyone to jail for a pure drug offense. They should be going into treatment across the board. That's what we should be spending money on. That's why I set up drug courts, which were never funded by our Republican friends. They should not be going to jail for a drug or an alcohol problem. They should be going into treatment. That's what we've been trying to do. That's what I'm going to get done, because I think the American people have now seen that, in fact, it was a mistake to pass those laws relating to drug. But they were not in the crime bill.
But why didn't he get it done? See, it's all talk, no action with these politicians. Why didn't he get it done? That's what I'm going to do when I become president. You were vice president along with Obama as your president, your leader, for 8 years. Why didn't you get it done? You had 8 years to get it done. Now you're saying you're going to get it done because you're all talk and no action, Jim.
We got a lot of it done. We released 38,000. We got 38,000 prisoners left from the.
You got nothing done.
38,000 prisoners were released from federal prison. There were over 1,000 people who were given clemency. In fact, we're the ones that put in the legislation saying we could look at pattern and practice of police departments and what they were doing, how they were conducting themselves. I could go on, but we began the process. We lost an election. That's why I'm running to win back that election and change his terrible policy.
I just asked one question. Why didn't you do it in the 8 years, a short time ago? Why didn't you do it? You just said, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do this. You put tens of thousands of mostly black young men in prison. Now you're saying you're going to undo that. Why didn't you get it done? You had 8 years with Obama. You know why, Joe? Because you're all talk and no action.
All right, Vice President Biden, and then we're going to move on to the next section.
We had a Republican Congress. That's the answer.
Well, you got to talk them into it, Joe. Sometimes you got to talk them into it.
We're going to move on to our next section,
like I did with criminal justice reform. I had to talk Democrats into it.
Gentlemen, we're running out of time, so we got to get on to climate change, please. You both have very different visions on climate change. President Trump, you say that environmental regulations have hurt jobs in the energy sector. Vice President Biden, you have said you see addressing climate change as an opportunity to create new jobs. For each of you, how would you both combat climate change and support job growth at the same time? Starting with you, President Trump, you have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
So we have the Trillion Trees program. We have so many different programs. I do love the environment, but what I want is the cleanest, crystal clear water, the cleanest air. We have the best, lowest number in carbon emissions, which is a big standard that I notice Obama goes with all the time. Not Joe. I haven't heard Joe use the term because I'm not sure he knows what it represents or means, but I have heard Obama use it. And we have the best carbon emission numbers that we've had in 35 years under this administration. We are working so well with industry, but here's what we can't do. Look at China, how filthy it is. Look at Russia. Look at India. It's filthy. The air is filthy. The Paris Accord, I took us out because we were going to have to spend trillions of dollars, and we were treated very unfairly. When they put us in there, they did us a great disservice. They were going to take away our businesses. I will not sacrifice tens of millions of jobs, thousands and thousands of companies because of the Paris Accord. It was so unfair. China doesn't kick in until 2030. Russia goes back to a low standard, and we kicked in right away. It would have destroyed our businesses. So, you ready? We have done an incredible job environmentally. We have the cleanest air, the cleanest water, and the best carbon emission standard.
C-SPAN thanks the cable and satellite companies who fund our public service.
We're going to pass the point of no return within the next 8 to 10 years. 4 more years of this man eliminating all the regulations that were put in by us to clean up the climate, to limit limit emissions, will put us in a position where we're going to be in real trouble. Here's where we have a great opportunity. I was able to get both all the environmental organizations as well as labor, the people worried about jobs, to support my climate plan. Because what it does, it will create millions of new good-paying jobs. We're going to invest in, for example, 50,000 charging stations on our highways so that we can own the electric car market of the future. In the meantime, China is doing that. We're going to be in a position where we're going to see to it that we're going to take 4 million existing buildings and 2 million existing homes and retrofit them so they don't leak as much energy, saving hundreds of millions of barrels of oil in the process and creating significant number of jobs. And by the way, the whole idea of what this is all going to do, it's going to create millions of jobs, and it's going to clean the environment. Our health and our jobs are at stake. That's what's happening. And what right now, by the way, Wall Street firms indicated that my plan will in fact create 18.6 million jobs, 7 million more than his. This is from Wall Street. And I'll create $1 trillion more in economic growth than his proposal does. Not on climate, just on the economy.
President Trump,
Today came out and said very strongly, $6,500 will be taken away from families under his plan, that his plan is an economic disaster. If you look at what he wants to do, if you look at his plan, his environmental plan, you know who developed it? AOC plus 3. They know nothing about the climate. I mean, she's got a good line of stuff, but she knows nothing about the climate. And they're all hopping through hoops for AOC plus 3. Look, their real plan costs $100 trillion. If we had the best year in the history of our country for 100 years, we would not even come close to a number like that. When he says buildings, they want to take buildings down because they want to make bigger windows into smaller windows. As far as they're concerned, if you had no window, it would be a lovely thing. This is the craziest plan that anybody has ever seen. And this wasn't done by smart people. This wasn't done by anybody. Frankly, I don't even know how it can be good politically. Right. They want to spend $100 trillion. That's their real number. He's trying to say it was 6. It's $100 trillion. They want to knock down buildings and build new buildings with little, tiny, small windows. I mean, and many other things.
Okay.
And many other things.
Let me have the Vice President respond, and we're running out of time, and we have a lot more questions to get to. So let's hear from the Vice President. I have a number more questions.
I don't know where he comes from. I don't know where he comes up with these numbers.
Queen.
$100 trillion. Give me a break. This plan was endorsed by every major environmental group and every labor group. Labor. because they know the future lies. The future lies in us being able to breathe, and they know there are good jobs in getting us there. And by the way, the fastest growing industry in America is solar energy and wind. He thinks wind causes cancer, windmills. It's the fastest growing jobs, and they pay good prevailing wages, 45, 50 bucks an hour. We can grow and we can be cleaner if we go the route I'm proposing.
President Trump, please respond, and then I have some
We are
follow-ups.
energy independent for the first time. We don't need all of these countries that we had to fight war over because we needed their energy. We are energy independent. I know more about wind than you do. It's extremely expensive, kills all the birds. It's very intermittent. It's got a lot of problems. And they happen to make the windmills in both Germany and China. And the fumes coming up, if you're a believer in carbon emission, the fumes coming up to make these massive windmills is more than anything that we're talking about with natural gas, which is very clean. One other thing.
Find me a scientist
Solar.
that said that.
I love solar, but solar doesn't quite have it yet. It's not powerful yet to really run our big, beautiful factories that we need to compete with the world. So
False.
It's all a pipe dream. But you know what we'll do? We're going to have the greatest economy in the world. But if you want to kill the economy, get rid of your oil industry. You want, and what about fracking?
All right, let me allow
fracking.
Vice President Biden to
I
respond.
never said I oppose fracking.
You said it on tape.
I did. Show the tape. Put it on your website.
I'll put it on.
Put it on the website. The fact of the matter is he's flat lying.
Would you rule out banning fracking?
I do rule out banning fracking because the answer, we need other industries to transition to get to ultimately a complete zero emissions by 2025. What I will do with fracking over time is make sure that we can capture the emissions from the fracking, capture the emissions from gas. We can do that, and we can do that by investing money and doing it. But it's a transition to that.
I have one more question in this pod, and then we have.
He was against fracking. He said it. I will show that to you tomorrow. I am against fracking. Until he got the nomination, went to Pennsylvania, then he said, but you know what, Pennsylvania? He'll be against it very soon because his party is totally against it.
Fracking on federal land, I said. No fracking or oil on federal land.
Let me ask this final question in this section, and then I want to move on to our final section. President Trump, people of color are much more likely to live near oil refineries and chemical plants. In Texas, there are families who worry the plants near them are making them sick. Your administration has rolled back regulations on these kinds of facilities. Why should these families give you another 4 years in office?
The families that we're talking about are employed heavily, and they're making a lot of money, more money than they've ever made. If you look at the kind of numbers that we produce for Hispanic, for Black, for Asian, it's 9 times greater, the percentage gain, than it was in 3 years, than it was under 8 years of the 2 of them, to put it nicely. 9 times more. Now, somebody lives, I have not heard the numbers or the statistics that you're saying, but they're making a tremendous amount of money economically. We saved it, and I saved it again a number of months ago when oil was crashing because of the pandemic. We saved it. We got, say what you want about relationship, we got Saudi Arabia, Mexico, and Russia to cut back, way back. We saved our oil industry, and now it's very vibrant again. And everybody has very inexpensive gasoline. Remember that.
Vice President Biden, your response, and then we're going to have a final question for both of you.
My response is that those people live on what they call fence lines. He doesn't understand this. They live near chemical plants that, in fact, pollute, chemical plants and oil plants and refineries that pollute. I used to live near that when I was growing up in Claymont, Delaware. And all the more oil refineries in Marcus Hook and the Delaware River than there is any place, including in Houston at the time. When my mom get in the car when there was first frost to drive me to school, turning the windshield up, there'd be oil slick in the window. That's why so many people in my state were dying and getting cancer. The fact is, those frontline communities, it doesn't matter what you're paying them. It matters how you keep them safe. What do? And you impose restrictions on the pollutions the pollutants coming out of those fence line communities.
Okay, I have one final question.
Would he close down the oil industry?
It falls.
Would you close down the oil industry?
By the way, I would transition from the oil industry, yes.
Oh,
I would
that's
transition.
a big statement.
It is a big statement.
That's a
because
big statement.
I would stop.
Why would you do that?
Because the oil industry pollutes significantly.
I see.
Here's the deal. But
That's
you
a
can't
big
do that.
statement.
Well, if you let me finish the statement, because it has to be replaced by renewable energy over time. And I'd stop giving to the oil industry, I'd stop giving them federal subsidies. He won't give federal subsidies to the gas, to solar and wind.
Yeah.
Why are we giving it to oil industry?
We actually do give
All
it
right.
to solar and wind.
We
And
have
that's
one
maybe the
final
biggest
question.
statement in terms of business. That's the biggest statement.
Okay.
Because
We have
basically
one
what he's
final
saying
question,
is he is
Mr.
going to
President.
destroy the oil industry. Okay. Will you remember that, Texas? Will you remember that, Pennsylvania, Oklahoma?
Vice President Biden, let me give you 10 seconds to respond, and then
Ohio.
I have to get to the final question. Vice President Biden.
He takes everything out of context, but the point is, look, we have to move toward a net zero emissions. The first place to do that by the year 2035 is in energy production, by 2050 totally.
All right. One
Is he
final
gonna get
question
China
to
to
both
do
of
it?
you. No, we're finished with
Is
this.
he
We
going
have
to
to
get
move on
China
to
to
our
do it?
final question. We
No,
have to
I'm
move
going
on
to
to our final
rejoin Paris
question.
Accord and make China abide by what they agreed to.
All
That'll
right, this
cost you
is
$1
about
trillion.
leadership, gentlemen. And this first question does go to you, President Trump. Imagine this is your inauguration day. What will you say in your address to Americans who did not vote for you? You'll each have 1 minute, starting with you, Mr.
We have to make our country totally successful as it was prior to the plague coming in from China. Now we're rebuilding it, and we're doing record numbers, 11.4 million jobs in a short period of time, et cetera. But I will tell you, go back. Before the plague came in, just before, I was getting calls from people that were not normally people that would call me. They wanted to get together. We had the best black unemployment numbers in the history of our country. Hispanic, women, Asian, people with diplomas, with no diplomas, MIT graduates, #1 in the class. Everybody had the best numbers. And you know what? The other side wanted to get together. They wanted to unify. Success is going to bring us together. We are on the road to success. But I'm cutting taxes, and he wants to raise everybody's taxes, and he wants to put new regulations on everything. He will kill it. If he gets in, you will have a depression, the likes of which you've never seen. Your 401ks will go to hell, and it'll be a very, very sad day for this country.
All right. Vice President Biden, same question to you. What will you say during your inaugural address to Americans who did not vote for you?
I will say, I'm an American president. I represent all of you, whether you voted for me or against me. And I'm going to make sure that you're represented. I'm going to give you hope. We're going to move. We're going to choose science over fiction. We're going to choose hope over fear. We're going to choose to move forward because we have enormous opportunities to make things better. We can grow this economy. We can deal with the systemic racism. And at the same time, we can make sure that our economy is being run and moved and motivated by clean energy, creating millions of new jobs. And that's the fact. That's what we're going to do. And I'm going to say, as I said at the beginning, what is on the ballot here is the character of this country. Decency, honor, respect, treating people with dignity, making sure that everyone has an even chance. And I'm going to make sure you get that. You haven't been getting it the last 4 years.
All right. I want to thank you both for a very robust hour and a half, a fantastic debate. Really appreciate it. President Trump, former Vice President Joe Biden, thank you to Belmont University for hosting us tonight. And most importantly, thank you to those watching tonight. Election Day is November 3rd. Don't forget to vote. Thank you, everyone, and have a great night.
Thank you.
Well, welcome back to the Daily Wire Backstage. I'm here with Andrew Klavan, Michael Knowles, and Ben Shapiro to recap on what I'm hoping you all just watched as we did, which is the second debate between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. Reminder, if you're not a Daily Wire insider or all access member, you can join during the course of this broadcast for 20% off with the coupon code DEBATE. And now they have removed the exclamation mark, so all you have to remember is just DEBATE, D-E-B-A-T-E. We just saw the most civilized debate. Yeah. I think even if you go all the way back through the Democrat primaries, this was the most civil debate. much different in tone than what we saw last time. How do you think it played for the president, Michael?
I think Welker did a good job. I don't want to overstate that. I think she went easier on Biden. I think she went tougher on Trump. There's no doubt about that. But overall, she did a very good job, and she did infinitely better than Chris Wallace. Trump thanked her for it, which was good. And Trump knew he knew what he was doing this time. He learned. He took the lessons. And most importantly of all, it's not just he knew when to let Biden talk, but he knew when to emphasize what Biden had just said. You heard it right at the end there. Biden said, yeah, I'm basically going to get rid of the oil industry. And he said, hold on, before we move on, that's a big deal. And he said it about 3 or 4 times because otherwise they were going to gloss over it. Very important, and it really could sway some votes to Trump.
Drew, what'd you make of it?
The last time we watched the debate, I said the debate was a tie on points and Trump lost. And Trump lost because he didn't let Biden talk. He didn't let Biden show himself for what he is. He made himself overly aggressive. He made himself a bully. I thought this was a wash on points, and Trump won. And he won because 2 narratives went down the drain. The narrative that Biden can't stand for 90 minutes and speak semi-coherently, he did. And the narrative that Donald Trump is the devil from hell. And I think that is the more powerful narrative. That's the narrative that's been being sold to us for 4 years by the mainstream media and just about everybody else in the elite communications industry. And Trump just destroyed it. He was helped, as we all said he would be. He was helped by the rules that forced him to have some discipline. He is not a disciplined guy. He looked disciplined. You heard what he was saying. And what he was saying basically was Joe Biden doesn't know what he's talking about. And I think that's pretty clearly the case. I think he had a couple of great lines that will resonate with people. Who built the cages, Joe, was probably the best one. That's kind of the one that I think will resonate for the longest time. The press tomorrow is going to say, isn't it wonderful that Joe Biden is sentient? But I think what people saw was a president who knows what he's doing, basically, and a guy who's just a standard issue politician who's been in government for 47 years. This is the kind of debate that brings out the people who were thinking, I don't like Trump. I voted for him before, but now I won't. Now I think they can come back and say, no, wait a minute. He is the guy I thought he was.
I think that's a great point. Ben, what did you make of it?
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that last point. I mean, after having cut that video this week talking about how I'll vote for Trump because, despite all of the character flaws and all those problems and everything that we know about him, the bottom line is that when you look at the alternatives, this is the better alternative for the country. It makes you more comfortable voting for him. After the last debate, I think a lot of people got very uncomfortable voting for him because of his behavior. I think after his COVID behavior, people got very uncomfortable voting for him. You saw it in the polls. They started to immediately separate. I think you're going to see the polls start to come back together a little bit here. And I will say that I thought that the only aspect of this where he did not handle himself really well, actually, was about the first 15, 20 minutes. I thought the first 15, 20 minutes, before he got to the actual lockdown of it, when they were just talking about how you handled COVID generally, I thought that Biden was very on message the first 15 to 20 minutes. It was a lying message. It was an untrue message, right? Yeah. He keeps saying over and over that everybody has died because of Trump. And I wish that Trump would have just said to him, Joe, how many lives would you have saved considering that people all over the world are dying of this thing? How many lives did Andrew Cuomo not save and Gretchen Whitmer and various other people who took exactly your political recommendations? But I thought that after that, he acquitted himself, I thought, incredibly well, actually. That's about as good as you're going to see Donald Trump on a debate stage. And as you were mentioning, Michael, I thought that there were several moments where he jumped in and he really hammered home a point. And this is where he really is good, right? He's a hammer in search of a nail. And sometimes he stumbles on a nail and he hits it really, really hard. So there were 3 or 4 of these times. He did it over and over with, you've been here for 47 years, you've been here for 8 years, you did nothing. I thought the weakest moment of the debate for Biden by far was that moment where Trump turned to him and said, so where were you? Why didn't you do anything? And there's this long pause. And then Biden says, we had a Republican Congress. Well, that isn't even true. He had a Democratic Congress up through 2010. So, he has to lie about it. And then Trump comes back with, well, you could talk to them, right? It was actually a really good moment for Trump. I thought that the moment where he went after him on criminal justice reform, again, same kind of thing. I thought that he hammered him pretty well on the Hunter Biden stuff, although, again, he wasn't able to draw the whole narrative. But just the fact that now the media are going to have to come out and explain what Trump was talking about, which is going to be the story, right? After this is going to be Trump lied about how much money there's no evidence that Joe Biden took direct money from the Russians. He didn't take $3.5 million, but they're going to have to explain that Hunter Biden actually did receive money via the mayor of Moscow's wife. And what does that mean? And he was smart enough to keep saying the Biden family, right? As opposed to just Joe Biden personally. So, I think that he'll get fact checked up the wazoo. I think some of it will be deserved. But I think that in the end, this was a an infinitely better performance for Trump. And if you are somebody who is not on the fence, not about which candidate to support, but on the fence about you kind of like Trump, or at least you're okay with Trump, and You're wondering, is it really worth it for me to go out and vote for him in one of these swing states? I think you feel a lot more comfortable going out and standing in line and voting for the guy after this.
Can I just make one other point?
Yes.
On the fact checks, I think if there's any even semblance of fairness in the fact checks, Biden loses. He lied several times on major points. Trump got some things, made some inaccuracies, but Biden looked into the camera and lied repeatedly.
The trouble is, Drew, if I had some ham, I could make a ham sandwich. If I had some bread, there is no such thing as a fact check.
Yeah.
The fact checks are Democratic left-wing opinion columns.
Joe
but
Biden,
you're right. If there were, it would be.
Joe Biden openly said in that debate that not a single human being lost their private health insurance because of Obamacare.
Yeah.
That is, that was literally called the #1 lie of the year by PolitiFact just a few years ago when Barack Obama suggested that you wouldn't lose your doctor or lose your insurance under Obamacare. And literally millions of people were kicked off of their private health insurance because many of those insurance plans became illegal under Obamacare. Right. You couldn't buy a bare bones insurance plan under Obamacare.
But the biggest lie of the night, and it's gone completely unchecked now at two consecutive debates, is that if you lost someone to COVID-19, that is Donald Trump's fault. COVID-19 has killed people all over the world. And to the president's point, it killed more people in New York than anywhere else in this country. The fact that they allow Joe Biden to say that there won't be a single fact check about it is evidence of what Michael is saying, which is that fact-checking sites right now are really just the most front-facing piece of the Democrat propaganda machine. It's a real vulnerability for conservatives and one that we as a group probably need to think a little bit more about. Before we do that, I want to talk about something that makes my life a whole lot easier, and that is our friends over at Stamps.com. You have a lot of things that you need to be doing in your life. You need to be listening to the Daily Wire. You need to be checking in on whether or not Andrew Klavan survived yet another Klavanless weekend. You don't want to spend a minute of your holiday season, a minute of your any season at the post office. Sign up for Stamps.com instead. There is absolutely no risks. The post office, it's going to be busy. Busy is not a place you want to be. You don't have time for that. You don't want to be around the crowds. You don't want to stand in line. Stamps.com brings the post office to you. And now UPS shipping is right there on your computer as well. Mail and ship anything from the convenience of your home or office with Stamps.com. Anything you can do at the post office, you can do with just a few clicks. Anything you can do at the post office except lose your ever-loving mind standing in a long line behind someone eating a bag of chips. That actually happened to me once at a post office. They were crunching on the chips and rattling their bag. And, I don't want to say that I have OCD, like I'm not a total wimp, but it was like fingernails on a chalkboard. Stamps.com, no fingernails, no chalkboard. Stop wasting your time. Go out to, if you're in business in particular, get Stamps.com. We use it around here. Saves us time, saves us money, saves us hassle. Ben, you use Stamps.com.
I do use Stamps.com, Jeremy. Thank you for mentioning it. And let me tell you, don't spend a minute of your holiday season at the post office this year. Instead, sign up for Stamps.com. There's no risk. With my promo code Shapiro, yes, the best of all promo codes, you get a special offer that includes a 4-week trial plus free postage and digital scale. No long-term commitments or contracts. Just head on over to Stamps.com, click on that microphone at the top of the homepage, and type in the only word that matters, Shapiro. That's Stamps.com. Enter Shapiro. Stamps.com. Never go to the post office again.
So before we get to any of the other important policy clips, I want to get to the most important clip of the night because it is indeed the most important clip in the history of American politics. And that is clip number 12, in which Joe Biden, well, you just have to see it to believe it.
You know what, North Korea, we're not in a war. We have a good relationship. People don't understand. Having a good relationship
Trump,
with leaders of other countries is a good thing.
We have a lot of questions to get to.
Not
Your
like
response.
saying we had a good relationship with Hitler before he, in fact, invaded Europe.
Listen, I'm no history buff.
That guy right there.
He was a pal. He was a pal, Hitler. I always liked him until he invaded Europe.
If he hadn't invaded Europe.
then I thought, maybe he's not as nice as I thought he was.
I feel like Daniel Dale might want to get right on that one over at CNN. The guy does spout lies at an unbelievable rate. But the fact that Trump is the one who always gets fact checked with these huge, enormous, long lists of fact checks. Joe Biden for a long time has been an incredible liar. He's been lying in politics like a rug since the 1980s when he was claiming to, have a railroading background or some such that was actually Neil Kinnock's background. So there's nothing new about that, but he did lie like many, many times tonight, like a lot of times.
So here's Joe Biden. Here's Joe Biden lying in one single statement. He is on both sides of a particular issue. Roll clip number 3 for us.
And I don't look at this in terms of the way he does. Blue states and red states. They're all the United States. And look at the states that are having such a spike in the coronavirus. They're the red states. They're the states in the Midwest. They're the states in the upper Midwest. That's where the spike is occurring.
That's enough.
In fact, he
I
fact checks himself.
Yeah, I don't see red states or blue states, and the red states suck.
You know, by the way,
But if I did, I mean, also, I do love that he is now just overtly hijacking Barack Obama's slogans.
Yeah,
He's
that's
like,
right.
I made one up the other day. I think it goes like this: "Yes, we can." I think that's it. In fact, as the son of a black father and a white mother, I feel like I unify. Like,
he kind of threw Obama under the bus, though. He kept saying, "I was the vice president, not the president. If I'd been the president, I would have done things well."
The best point is where he just face planted Bernie. I will admit that I did get a bit of a thrill when he absolutely took Bernie and gave him the swirly. I mean, he just stuck his face directly in the toilet and flushed. It was
a good.
Like,
it was a good
there
clip.
was that
Although
one point where it was about Medicare for all, and he kept saying, "Well, I'm not a socialized medicine guy. I don't listen to these crazies in my own party. I'm not going to tell you that." Now, it turns out that he was actually lying about his own policy, of course, because everyone knows the public option is the first step to getting rid of private insurance. Because once you can subsidize a public option and you can use that public option in order to cram down low drug prices on the pharmaceutical companies, and presumably you would have to mandate that doctors and hospitals take that public option in order to make any of this work. Well, then you've already taken the first step to getting rid of private insurance. But it was pretty glorious to watch him just absolutely disown Bernie Sanders, who's now wandering around in Vermont, wondering what he's done with his life.
I wonder if there will actually be a consequence to throwing Obama under the bus. Obama is a thin-skinned man. Obama has no sense of humor about himself.
And he doesn't
Obama
like Biden
sees
much.
himself, he doesn't love Biden, and he sees himself as a religious figure, not a political figure. He was reluctant to endorse Biden. He essentially endorsed Biden after Biden seized the nomination. Yeah. And he didn't go on the road for Biden during the general election until today or yesterday. Literally, it was this week. And now, how are they going to go out on the road tomorrow when Biden's
threw him under the bus. You know, there's this other issue, which is that back in the 80s when Biden was plagiarizing people, he did it. First of all, there was no internet, so they couldn't check it. And he was plagiarizing foreign politicians over in Ireland. Now he's plagiarizing politicians that he worked for in America. They were the president. People can look it up. That's one issue. We keep calling Biden a liar, and he tells lies, so he's a liar. But I think the thing that's more definitive about Biden is that he's a cynic. He doesn't care about the truth. It's not that he's actively, he just doesn't care. And so he can actually say two completely opposite things in the same sentence.
Because when you've been in politics for 47 years, you actually know that the truth doesn't matter.
This is one of Trump's best moments, and nobody's going to talk about it tomorrow, but I think it played, which was when Trump said, Biden was saying, "Oh, look at your kitchen table, and you're reaching for your bed and all this." And Trump said, "You know, is that all you've got? Is that all that old politician stuff about the kitchen table and your bedroom?"
It was so good.
And I think that was just in a moment that undermined Biden completely. And every time he went back to it, every time Biden went back to the technique, it came back into your mind.
That's right.
You thought,
It was the Christie Rubio moment, right? It was the Christie Rubio moment.
Yes.
Where Rubio kept saying the same thing, and then Christie jumped in the 2016 early debates. And just for those who missed it, and Christie jumped in and said, "What you're going to say now is this whole thing about make no mistake, blah, blah, blah." And then Rubio immediately came back with it. That was fantastic because it was highly irritating that after being hit on his family, he went to this pre-planned line about, they don't care about my family, and they don't care about your family. They care about, you should be caring about your family, you, the American people. And Trump was like, "Go F yourself. It's ridiculous."
It actually is about
and I was
your
like,
family,
you know what?
Joe.
Good for him, because it is bull crap. I mean, it just is. It's bullshit. I'm sorry. Like when Joe Biden turns to camera and there's nothing I hate more in life than the sincere voice. I hate it. I effing hate it. I hate it in politics. People go down to the low register and they look to camera. They're just talking out here, and all of a sudden they go like this. "And now I'm very sincere because I'm talking directly to you."
So you're not a big Don Lemon fan, is what you're saying?
Oh my God, it's just absolutely the worst. Even our friends who do it, right? Like Ted used to do it during debates, and I'd be like, "Don't do it, Ted. Stop it, Ted. Don't do it, Ted." But like when Biden did that, and he's been doing it consistently throughout the debates, and Trump was like, "That's pathetic. You wrote that. You pre-wrote that. And everybody knows you pre-wrote that." I was like, points
you know,
to him.
it kills me to flatter Ben here, but actually, you did this to Piers Morgan, and it's a great tactic that Republicans should pay attention to. When you went on Piers Morgan's show to debate gun control, you knew exactly what he was going to do, and you say, okay, here's what Piers is going to do. He's going to come out and he's going to stand on the graves of the children of Sandy Hook, which he was planning. He was going to do that, and it totally put him off guard. And it was the same thing here. When you can call out the contrived tactic that your opponent is about to use, it is so devastating, and Trump used it to great effect.
Yep.
By
So
the
I
way,
wanna-
sorry,
Go ahead,
one more quick note on the China stuff. And I think he didn't explicate the China stuff particularly well. He kind of threw out some accusations, kind of like chum in the water, hoping that the sharks are going to circle around and feed off of it. The one thing that he did create was the fact that Joe Biden went over the top. So Biden didn't just say, I never received money from any foreign deals, which, okay, fine. He said, my son never did anything wrong. Hunter never did anything wrong. Nobody's ever said Hunter has done anything wrong. That's just a lie. Hunter Biden himself has admitted that he went around jet setting using his daddy's name to pick up bags of cash. And now he's got an ad.
So
right now, all Trump has to do is cut that ad.
That's right. I want to talk about the Hunter Biden stuff in detail because it's the big story of the week, the big story of the day, and was obviously a big issue in this debate. But first, I want to talk about the Second Amendment. Now more than ever, our Second Amendment is under assault. The left, as we discussed earlier in the program, the left, we're not debating the left today on policy. We're debating the left on the fundamental structures of our government. They actually want to do away with the protections of the First Amendment, the protections of the Second Amendment, the protections of the 14th Amendment. They want to do away with the Electoral College. They want to do away with the filibuster, which, while not constitutional, is a major norm in our system of government. Well, when the founders crafted the Constitution, the very first thing that they made sacred was the right of the individual to share their ideas without limitation by their government. And back then, there wasn't social media to limit it either. That's Amendment 1. The Second Amendment is essential. It's the bulwark against encroachment into that First Amendment. The Second Amendment is there to protect us from government intrusion. It's there to protect us from tyranny. That's the reason it comes right after the Second Amendment. I'm a gun owner. Owning a rifle, huge responsibility. I like to make other people gun owners. I like to take other people to buy their first firearms. I like to take other people to buy their first rifles. And one of the things that I tell them at all times, I don't even like to shoot. I don't love to hunt. I don't like to go to the shooting range. I own a rifle because I believe it's my civic responsibility to own a rifle. And I want to own the rifle that's contentious. I want to own the rifle that the left wants to take away from me because that's my civic responsibility too. I'll tell you the truth. If the left wasn't coming for our guns, I wouldn't own any guns. If the left wasn't coming for AR-15s, I wouldn't own any AR-15s. But the very fact that they want them means that I have a responsibility to own them, and I have a responsibility to own one that will work, one that will serve me if, God forbid, I'm ever put in a position of needing to use it. Bravo Company Manufacturing, our friends at BCM, they understand this. They build a professional-grade product built to combat standards. It's because BCM believes that the same level of protection should be provided to every American. You shouldn't have the rich Hollywood elite getting better protection than you. You shouldn't have government officials getting better protection than you. And the difference between private and professional, in both cases, if you need a firearm, you need it to work. The people at Bravo Company Manufacturing assume that when a rifle leaves their shop, it will be used in a life or death situation by a responsible citizen, law enforcement officer, or a soldier overseas. With that in mind, every component of a BCM rifle is hand-assembled and tested by Americans. The people at BCM feel that it's their moral responsibility as Americans to provide tools that will not fail the end user when it's not just a paper target, but someone coming to do you harm, someone coming to deprive you of your rights. BCM works with leading instructors and marksmen from top levels of America's Special Operations Forces, from the Marine Corps Force Reconnaissance to U.S. Army Special Operations Forces, connecting them with other Americans. These top instructors teach the skills necessary to defend yourself, your family, and others. It's not just a right to own a firearm, it's a responsibility. You should do it. And if you're going to do it, you should own something that's going to work. To learn more about Bravo Company Manufacturing, go over to BravoCompanyMFG.com. You'll discover more about their products, their special offers, and their upcoming events. That's BravoCompanyMFG.com. But what you really need to do is just go to YouTube, because these guys are geniuses at marketing. They really understand how to use the internet, which is as important a skill to protect your rights and to protect the future of your rights as firearm ownership is. And our pals over at BCM really understand it. They make really entertaining videos, and you will learn a lot about what they do. YouTube.com/Bravo Company USA. That's YouTube.com/Bravo Company USA. So, Hunter Biden. The media has basically blacked out all information about Hunter Biden. for the last week. As we said in the beginning of the show, NPR put out a statement in which they said, we're not going to talk about the Hunter Biden story because we don't want to. I mean, that's essentially what they said. We don't think it's news because we don't like that it's news. Donald Trump used this opportunity tonight to make absolutely sure that everyone in America, even people, listen, we live in a bubble. We live in conservative media. Everybody we know has been talking about it for a week. People who, watch the CBS Evening News after a hard day's work probably did not know any of these accusations until tonight. The president did a fantastic job. And while I agree that Kristen Welker did a fairly good job tonight, the one place where she really intervened to save Joe Biden was in the very first exchange when the president came at VP Biden specifically about his family's history of corruption. And she didn't want Biden to be angry. She didn't want Biden to make a mistake. So she kept trying to pull it away. But Biden demanded to be heard. So we had a lot of back and forth on this. My question, well, let's play clip 5A here and let people hear what was said.
Joe got $3.5 million from Russia, and it came through Putin because he was very friendly with the former mayor of Moscow, and it was the mayor of Moscow's wife. And you got $3.5 million. Your family got $3.5 million. And, someday you're going to have to explain, why did you get 3.5? I never got any money from Russia. I don't get money from Russia.
And then let's roll right into 5B when to Ben's point, Biden really overstates his claim here.
Vice President Biden, you may respond. 30 seconds. And then I do want to follow up on the election security.
I have not taken a penny from any foreign source ever in my life. We learned that this president paid 50 times the tax in China, has a secret bank account with China, does business in China, and in fact is talking about me taking money. I have not taken a single penny from any country whatsoever, ever.
I have not taken a single penny from any country whatsoever, ever. And then later he says, my son has not done anything wrong. Those are definitive statements. Will they hold up, Ben?
Well, I think that there's a possibility the first holds up. I mean, we've seen his tax records. There's nothing in there that suggests that he's received foreign money. It is also possible that he can claim he didn't receive foreign money if Biden is holding the cash in trust somewhere, right? I mean, that's also possible for him if you were really to kind of parse these things. But I think that in all likelihood, he probably has not seen money directly. I think my guess is that if you really had to boil this thing down, just looking at what we've seen, he probably said to Hunter Biden, go with God, use my name, go make bank. And I think that that's pretty obvious. I mean, Hunter Biden has said that fairly publicly. And that's fairly corrupt in and of itself. Whether he was personally benefiting from it or not, if your kids are making money off of your name while you're vice president of the United States and you're taking them on Air Force Two to go pick up giant checks in China, that is not a particularly good looking thing. That did not require these emails in order to reveal. The part where he overextended himself is that statement about Hunter. When he said nobody's ever indicated that Hunter did anything wrong. Well, I mean, there have been some indications considering that two of his business partners are now in jail for fraud. So it feels like there are some things that he probably did wrong here.
Yeah, there's also this issue that we know that Joe Biden has lied about this before, because Joe Biden said, I never spoke about my son's business dealings with him ever once. But his son contradicted that in an interview, I believe, with New York Magazine. It was with one of these magazines where he said, yeah, I talked to my dad, and my dad said, you better know what you're doing. Hunter went on a television interview and said, yeah, I never talked to my dad. And the interviewer, to her credit, said, well, what about this business of you better know what you're doing? He goes, yeah, well, look, but that was the end of the conversation. Well, actually, no, it wasn't even a conversation. Yeah, that's right. It wasn't a conversation. That's the story, and I'm sticking to it. So he has no credibility on it.
And it's also a matter of narrative, which is a very important thing. The narrative that Biden has been selling is that Trump is bad, I'm good. And that's just not true. People sent Donald Trump to the White House because they had the feeling that the government was no longer responsible to them. It was kind of a scam. It was what my kids call an op, that there was a Republican Party and a Democrat Party, but really no, it was really just a party that was snuggling up to the public trough and somehow sucking up this money. Joe Biden...
Which, by the way, the president said, he said, I became president because of you, Joe.
That's right. Yeah. And the thing is, they said, drain the swamp. Joe Biden is Swamp Thing. He is the guy who has kind of lived, brought his family together, and they have lived off his influence. Whether or not, I agree with Ben on this, it's still unclear whether or not Joe Biden himself benefited in terms of dollars from what Hunter Biden was doing, but that he allowed Hunter Biden, an obviously messed up guy, to profit off his influence is very clear at this point.
Well,
and that he lied about it too.
I'll actually push back on Drew and Ben. There are funny alliances that form on this show. It's quite often Jeremy and Ben versus Drew and Michael, but then every now and then it's Jeremy and Drew versus Ben and Michael. And today, I don't know where Michael is yet, but it's definitely Jeremy versus Ben and Drew. Where did Joe Biden's big-ass house come from?
Bingo, buddy. Totally.
This is the actual thing. Is there evidence that this particular chart? No. Joe Biden has been in the government since he was literally too young to be sworn in constitutionally. He was elected to the Senate, and he had to wait for his birthday in order to be sworn in because he was too young. 47 years he's been in government. Where did the big house come from? Where did the luxury travel come from? And it's not just Joe Biden. I think that when the story of this era is written, one of the enormous scandals that people will look back on is how people can spend an entire life making $180,000 in government service and somehow have net worths of $38 million. And you can say, oh, well, he wrote some books. He wrote a book and it did $10 million of business. That's amazing. A book that did $10 million of business might have paid him $5 million. And of that $5 million, he paid the government half.
Yeah, and it
that does not give you a net worth.
I mean, that's the thing.
That's right.
You wouldn't even make 50% of the. So okay, let's say he made $10 million on it. What does he take home? $1 million or less?
Right.
And then he pays half of that to the government. The numbers, I suspect, don't add up. Now, to Ben's point, I don't know that you're going to find a W-2 or something from Joe Biden taking money from some Ukrainian oligarch, but some money has made its way into Joe Biden's pocket somehow.
This is the thing about this, because I actually, this is weird, but I kind of agree with both Jeremy and Ben on this.
Yeah.
The money, the real money that Biden has made, he made after he left office, as these guys typically do. Obama did it too. He made a lot of money after he left office.
Bush too.
But the loans and the houses and the things that you get, the kind of easy mortgages that you get and the easy loans that you get, those are things that come from the swamp. And Joe Biden has accepted it all. He is a swamp creature. He is the face. He is the face of the government that they sent Donald Trump to Washington to fight.
2008, the New York Times reported this, right? I mean, in 2008, the New York Times, before it was verboten to report anything bad about Joe Biden, they reported back in 2008 when Obama was considering him. They talked about how he got a sweetheart loan from some people back in Delaware. He was able to buy a piece of land under market value in order to do that, which we know Barack Obama, by the way, also did with his neighbor back in Chicago. Now, politics allows people who want to influence you to do these kind of not quite illegal, but kind of scuzzy things in order to make clear to you exactly where your bread is buttered. And we know that Hunter's been doing that for years. I mean, it's been known for a very long time that Joe Biden, who is from Delaware, which is a state that is, very often used in order to incorporate businesses.
Anywhere else where people might be getting the vote.
Right. I mean, he's really from Delaware.
Michigan, Texas,
and Delaware is credit card land. And we all know that he's been a lobbyist essentially for the credit card companies for a very, very long time. And his son was working for some of the credit card companies. I mean, again, all this was reported by the New York Times in 2008. So it is true that he has a long history of just being a typical politician who is making a good living off of being a politician in public service. And Trump hit him hard on that today. I think that the foreign ties sort of highlight some of that stuff, and they make it more relevant today. It makes it feel like an October surprise. But the truth is that I'm not sure that you needed it if anybody had any sort of level of awareness about what exactly the government is, because you can write that story about nearly every politician in Washington, D.C., all of whom seem to enter the government being middle class and then all leave the government being in the top 1%. Including, by the way, Bernie Sanders, who's worth $1 million and has a lake house, right?
As somebody who was a reporter in my youth, I keep going back to the image in my mind of those 1940s movies of reporters, the guy with the snap brim hat and the press card and the hat band, you know, and he's typing on his typewriter, and Cary Grant comes in and says, I've got a story for you. The leading candidate for president has been basically profiting off influence peddling in his while he was vice president, and the reporter says, I'm not going to cover that because there's no governing authority, as Al Gore would say, over that really makes it illegal. No, it is corruption. It doesn't have to be illegal. There are plenty of things that are not crimes that are wrong and are bad, and Joe Biden has done all of them. And I think that this is the thing, the fact that the press is trying to cover this up, and I don't believe they've succeeded, by the way. I believe they've actually brought this story to the fore by trying to cover it up. The fact that the press is trying to cover it up is a point in Donald Trump's favor. It says to the people that the communications industry and the Democrats it supports and the institutions it supports is against you and doesn't really care what you think.
And I think we also need to give Trump credit for a tactic that he used here, which is he didn't get into the exact precise way that the money went from Ukraine or from China or wherever. He made this broad statement, which is, as Ben says, going to invite all of these fact checks. Namely, he said, Joe Biden, your family made $3.5 million. How did they do that? I think it's actually good to get the fact checks because it's going to elicit much more press. The media were trying to ignore it to begin with. It's going to elicit all this press, and it's going to put them on the defensive because they're going to have to say, no, Biden didn't get the $3.5 million. His son got the $3.5 million from then. Any way you explain it, people are going to be exposed to more of the story, which in itself is a very ugly story.
So I will say one other area where I thought that Trump really excelled. I mean, putting aside the Hunter Biden stuff for a second, I thought that when he got to his anti-lockdown program, I thought that was very, very strong stuff. Oh, yeah. And I thought it was deeply necessary. So the first 15 minutes, which was all about Joe Biden lying that everybody died because of Trump, and if there's an empty chair at your dinner table, it's because of Trump, and if there's a bad man hiding in your closet with a knife, it's because of Trump, and if you get cancer, it's because of Trump, and if your dog crapped the carpet, it's because of Trump, and all of this. You know, after all that was done, and Trump looked at him and he said, right, but you're Captain Lockdown over here. And Biden was like, well, you know, I really am only going to lock down if it's what the science says. He's like, well, I've got lots of people in the bureaucracy, and, you know, Anthony Fauci is one of them, but I'm not just going to listen to one guy if they say lockdown. I thought that's good stuff. I don't think most Americans are in the mood for further lockdown. And the heavy bet that Democrats are placing right now is that people are continuing to be absolutely petrified of the virus. And I got to tell you, I think in LA that's true. So now I'm in Florida. I don't think it's true. Yeah. I don't think it's true. I think in a lot of swing states, people are not petrified of the virus. I think that people are treating the virus with the appropriate level of risk. I think people are generally out and about living their lives. What I'm seeing here in South Florida, which again is hotly contested territory, I think Trump is going to win the state. I think the reason that Trump is going to win the state is because there's enormous enthusiasm, particularly in the Hispanic community, actually, for Trump in the state of Florida. But I think beyond that, people are not shutting down the way they do in California. In California, people seem pretty sanguine about like, okay, so I'm never going to my business again. Right, okay, so Disneyland is just going to be closed forever. Well, Disney World is open here, and they haven't had massive infections. All the schools are open here, and they have not had massive infections. In certain counties, they have mask mandates. Most people are abiding by them. But there doesn't seem to be just this generalized level of mask shaming that you see in some of the heavy blue areas. I think if there is a secret Trump vote out there that manifests beyond the polls, and this really is the question, right? Are the polls so super wrong? Is there this big hidden Trump vote? If it's there, I think it is manifest in the number of people who are irritated by the overt level of government control that has been exercised by the Democrats with regard to lockdown. And there are a lot of people out there who are going, listen, I'm okay with the masks. Like when Biden holds up the mask and he acts like it's the be-all end-all, you know what? Fine. I wear a mask when I'm more pro-mask than all you guys. I wear a mask when I'm out in public and I'm near other people. I think that it's a good idea to wear it when you're in close contact with other people. I've been told this by people, including Scott Atlas, that when you're in close contact with other people, that you should wear a mask. But that doesn't mean shut down my life. And if there's an uptick in a school, I don't think that means that you shut down the entire school. And when Trump says, I will say, Kristen Welker really blew it on one hour. There was one line she said, and I smote my forehead, like physically smote it, which hurt. And that was when Trump said, young people are fine. That is 100% true. Okay, young people are fine. They are much more fine from this than they are from the flu. There have been a grand total of, last count, as of yesterday, 74 Americans under the age of 15 who have died of COVID, out of several 100,000 infections at this point.
Right.
That is compared to some 470 Americans who died of flu in the last flu season under the age of 15. And Trump said it's not particularly dangerous for young people. And Kristen Welker said, well, yes, but they can get it and they can transmit it. And it was like, okay, so then you take measures to prevent them from transmitting it. And if the teachers are young, then that's okay. And if the teachers are not so young, then you keep them out of the classroom. And by the way, the evidence on transmission from kids tends to be that older kids transmit it and younger kids do not transmit it nearly as much. And that's why you haven't seen massive outbreaks in schools. So I thought that was a very strong point for Trump. And I was glad to see him argue that. I thought he was shockingly good on minimum wage. He actually understands that basic idea. Yeah. So there are a couple moments where he actually said things and I thought, well, I didn't realize that he could articulate it that well.
So we've got the lovely Elisha beaming in, not from her normal closet, but beaming in from the Ronald Reagan Museum in beautiful Santa Barbara, California. Elisha, you have some questions from our Daily Wire subscribers?
Absolutely. The big question everybody wants to know is, did tonight's debate change anyone's minds? And because of all the early voting, does it really matter?
Yeah, so I'll take a shot at that. I don't think that tonight's debate changed anyone's mind about about which worldview they would rather see emerge victorious in the election. But I think, and as the guys were saying earlier, I didn't weigh in, I think that it did change people's minds perhaps about whether or not they can vote for Donald Trump as a personal moral decision. I think that one of the reasons that the last debate didn't hurt Trump overly is because people are pretty dug in terms of the two camps at the moment. But that still isn't great for Trump, because being fully bought in to the conservative vision for the country still doesn't make it easy to vote for a guy with the personal failings that Trump has. And that last debate was so difficult to watch for this reason. It was so poisonous and turned people off. I think this made you see Donald Trump in a different way, probably the best light that we've seen him in any debate in the time that he's been in public life, and that it perhaps will give people the ability to say, yeah, I can get behind that. I can get behind that.
As far as the early vote, by the way, quick note on the early voting. So there is a question as to whether the early voting is a reflection of new voters coming in, or whether it's just banking the old voters. Meaning, maybe it's all the people who are already highly motivated to vote who are standing out there voting, and they would have voted on election day. Now they're just voting early because they can vote early. So that is unclear. Yep. Right now, they're saying maybe 50 million people have already voted, which is insane. First of all, it just shows the bull crap that early voting is. I mean, really, you should not be allowed to vote until election day. Unless you have some sort of physical incapacity to vote in person, you should be in a line, you should be voting election day. And if you got to wait a couple hours to do that, well, I'm sorry to break it to you, but that ain't the end of the world. I'm sorry that treating it like the media, every time there's a long line, they're like, it's voter suppression. Okay, seriously, it's voter suppression because there's a line? Because there's a line, it's voter suppression? Like, last I checked, voter suppression was like people with hoses and dogs and clubs beating the living crap out of you because they don't want you to vote. Not you had to wait in line while watching Netflix on your iPhone.
And when did the left decide it dislikes lines? Every single policy that they come up with forces us to stand in lines. What is it that Churchill said about socialist Great Britain after the war? He said it was Qtopia.
Yeah. Red lines are good. At the end of them, there's bread.
Yeah, exactly. Alicia, what are people saying?
All right. The other thing then is this is for everyone based on tonight and where the polling is. I know you've talked about it a little bit. Obviously, Pennsylvania came up a lot because it's an important Rust Belt swing state. Where do you guys think, what are your election predictions as of now?
There is one important issue here. I agree, generally, probably it didn't sway too many people other than people who are a little bit more moderate Republicans who are now feel more comfortable to vote for Trump. But this issue of I'm going to destroy the oil industry, which Trump really hit Biden on, that is going to matter for some voters. Now, how large an effect that's going to have, I'm not so sure. But going after fossil fuels, going after natural gas or oil or any of those industries, that could move some votes in Pennsylvania, and Pennsylvania could decide the election.
Yeah.
So here's my view of this. And Kristen Soltis-Anderson, the pollster, sort of laid this out on my show today. Basically, there are two sets of states that you need to watch on election night. One is the Sun Belt states, and the other is the Rust Belt states. If Biden wins North Carolina, the election is essentially over early. If Biden wins Florida, the election is essentially over early. Those are the ones that are going to start to come in early because those are East Coast states. Right, Pennsylvania will start to come in fairly early as well, but you're probably, this is what happened with Romney. I remember when North Carolina and Florida started to move against Romney, it was like, oh, okay, this is going to be, it's going to be over fairly early. Even though I think Romney ended up pulling out North Carolina narrowly. Once he lost Florida, it was dead over. So Trump needs to win the following states. He needs to win Arizona, he needs to win Florida, he needs to win North Carolina. And then he needs to win one of the following three states, the Rust Belt states, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania. Now, famously, Hillary Clinton had built up that blue firewall. So the question right now really, in my mind, comes down to Pennsylvania. I think the entire election may hinge on Pennsylvania, which is why Trump is going to go full broke on he's banning fracking, he's getting rid of the oil industry. He's got to win Pennsylvania. If he doesn't win Pennsylvania, it is basically over because the chances that he loses Pennsylvania and Michigan, but somehow pulls out Wisconsin, I think that's going to be very difficult for him. I think there's a good shot that, as I say, I think that he's going to win Florida. Florida tends to overperform for Republicans. That's why DeSantis is governor here instead of the meth addict in a hotel room with the gay porn star guy, Andrew Gillum. But I think North Carolina will trend red. I think that Rust Belt, which nobody expected him to win last time, it's going to be harder for him, and it's really going to come down to Pennsylvania in the main. So that's why the thing you mentioned there, Michael, is the thing. I mean, if he's able to really hone in on the fracking and he's threatening your job and he's threatening your future, that's going to have to be the ball game for him because that's where he's going to have to put his chips.
There's one other narrative here. I don't know what's going to happen. I got to be absolutely honest. I'm not a gambling man in general, but I will put a flutter on something. I wouldn't put a nickel on this race. I do not know who's going to win. I'm not a person who dismisses polls. I don't think the pollsters are trying to deceive us or anything like this, and they've been fairly accurate in the midterms. They were fairly accurate, actually, in some ways, in the Hillary Clinton Trump election. But something is really discordant in what I'm seeing. I am seeing Donald Trump go out there and speak to thousands of people who show up. I'm seeing Joe Biden go out and speak to nobody. And I'm seeing people who say, you know, I didn't vote, like one is Ben Shapiro, who I didn't vote for Trump before. I'm going to vote for Trump now. I'm not seeing anybody who said I voted for Trump before, but I'm going to vote for Biden now. Something is wrong. And the move in identification and people who identify as Republicans, which is something like between 5 and 8 points, a shift from people who identified as Democrats to identifying as Republicans. There is another narrative here where Trump wins by a landslide. I'm not saying that's going to happen. I really don't know what's going to happen. But there is something terribly wrong, discordant between the polls and what I'm seeing with my own eyes.
I agree with you. Trump could win 49 states or lose 49 states, or he could win by 3 votes in Wisconsin and think it's litigated for 20 years. Or Joe Biden could die of COVID-19 next Tuesday.
It's 2020.
Right, it's 2020. And then we'd have a constitutional crisis because legitimately the Constitution does not answer the question of what happens in an election in which one of the candidates dies. You could say, oh, it'll be then Kamala wins. That's not actually how it works. All of that to say, I agree with you, Drew. When you read that it's Biden 10, Biden 14, that 56% of people say Trump doesn't deserve a second term, all these numbers that we keep seeing, obviously very discouraging. When you drive around, you don't see Biden flags and you don't see Biden rallies. You know, when the NBA finals are down 70% from the numbers that they had just 1 year ago. Now, you would probably think the numbers might even tick up because nobody's been able to go to games in person. TV's all you have. That's obviously a political activity that's happening. There are these strange signs that make you think it is actually possible that our accounting system is so broken, either by intent or by simply not changing with the times, that we're missing. And we're just not going to know that until election night. Yep. And to Ben's point, we could know it 1 hour in. If Florida drops blue, you know, not even an hour, 15 minutes after the polls close on the East Coast, then all of it was right. All of it was true. If the night goes well for Donald Trump, there's going to need to be a reckoning in the way that we approach these questions, which was not true in 2016. The polls were not radically wrong in 2016. But if Donald Trump has a big night on election night, the polls will have been actually fundamentally wrong.
Well, and by the way, this is something that the pollsters say, and they point this out, is that the polls were wrong in Romney's direction in 2012. Right, so they were wrong against Donald Trump in 2016. They were wrong in Romney's direction in 2012. Romney was supposed to be very competitive in Ohio, right? He was supposed to be very competitive in Pennsylvania. He held this big rally in the last days, and the polls were saying it was super close. And then he just got absolutely blown out in both Ohio and Pennsylvania. So, I mean, at some point, we're going to have to, if they're wrong again, at some point, all the pollsters have to learn to code, because this is just, it's too wild. The one area where I will say that I think the debate could matter that nobody's actually talking about is it's not just about comfort level with voting for Trump. It's about Republicans showing up to the polls generally to vote for Senate candidates, which may be the most important thing that happens. Because if the Republicans lose the Senate and Biden is elected, prepare for Armageddon. I mean, it's just going to be a disaster in every possible way. And there are 1,000 close races, right? I mean, Maine is a close race. North Carolina is a close race. Michigan is a close race. We've got close races in 2 close races in Georgia. We've got close races basically across the board in Montana, in Colorado, in Arizona. A lot of Republicans are up for re-election. In Iowa.
It's a bad map for Republicans in the Senate this year.
It's a terrible map for Republicans in the Senate. And all of this stuff, all those races are pretty close. So even if Trump is outside the margin of error in some of those states, if he ticks up the polls just a little bit for the Senate candidate, then he will have done a world of good for the Republican Party generally.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Alicia, I want to get a few more questions in from our dailywire.com subscribers.
Absolutely. Some All Access members, you guys just talked about the Senate there. That was a question that was brought up. Of course, Trump talked about Republicans regaining Congress. Do you guys think that that's even plausible?
No.
It's
Not even
unlikely. I
close.
mean, anything's possible, but it's not
Tell
likely.
us how you really feel.
No, this is not possible.
Yeah,
It's not
yeah.
possible. This I will put money on. There is no way
Bye.
on planet Earth. By the way, I mean, nobody's talking about this, but one of the real disasters for Republicans, if it does occur, will be something nobody has talked about yet, and that is the regaining of state legislatures and governorships by the Democrats. Because in 2020 is redistricting and census, right? I mean, they could fundamentally reshape how Congress is elected and take the House away from Republicans for 10 years based on the redistricting and the census. So you picked a bad time to quit sniffing glue here. I mean, it turns out to be a bad year. Any year ending in 0 is a very, very bad time for the Republican Party to have a rough year.
Yeah.
Along those lines, do you guys think that there will be an increased interest in the removal of the Electoral College?
Only if Trump wins.
Yeah,
I think either way.
I think if the Democrats win, actually, that's when they'll push it forward. It is an amazing thing that they don't like the First Amendment, they don't like the Second Amendment, they don't like the Electoral College, and they want to pack the court because Donald Trump is a threat to the Constitution.
I do think there is this movement to democratize everything, which, that's the way they use that term. I don't think that's really what democracy would call for, but they want to erode all of these safeguards that are in our Constitution and move to this much more egalitarian type of system. The one thing impeding this, though, and it's what I think has preserved the Electoral College over the years, is that whoever wins, if they make the argument that the Electoral College is illegitimate somehow, then they're saying that their own victory is illegitimate because the Electoral College elects the president. So I think that is one sort of pushing on the brakes toward abolishing the Electoral College, but probably in the long run, if we continue down
we
this
lose
more
the Electoral
egalitarian
College not to a national election. It would require an amendment to the to the Constitution, which they can't pull off. We're going to lose the Electoral College when we start losing more and more state houses, because the movement that's afoot where the Electoral College is concerned is actually a nullification movement at the state level, where people are just essentially deciding as state governments that whoever wins the majority nationally will get all of the so-called national popular vote, which does not exist. There is not a national election for president in this country, but they've made up this term, the national popular vote, and they're saying whoever wins it gets all of our electors, no matter who won in our actual state. And many states have already passed this. And so I actually think that's what happens to the Electoral College.
I agree with that. There's a backdoor way of doing it also, where they just proportionally split it, where instead of it being a winner take all for the electors, instead they proportionally split it by vote. And you could see that happening for sure. By the way, it is worth noting that the Democrats pushing for the quote unquote most democratic system, it would not be the most democratic system, right? We would still be a two-party system. If you're going to push for quote unquote pure democracy, then basically you have to, at that point, you need a parliamentarian system so that coalitional politics are actually required, because otherwise you literally have a 51% party cramming down on the other 49% of the population anything they damn want. And that is that's pure mob rule through popular vote, which, I mean, if they want that, it's amazing how fast people, it is truly amazing how fast people don't remember, how fast they forget history. I mean, it was pure majoritarian mob rule in states that allowed for Jim Crow. I mean, that is what was happening.
Yeah, and they also don't know what actually goes on in parliamentarian systems. It's funny, when you're an American, people will often, when they're unhappy with the result of an election, come to you and say, we've got to get rid of this two-party system. And we need a third party to rise. The two-party system's broken. The two-party system's flawed. The two-party system makes us radical. But the truth is, the two-party system defeats radicalization. Yeah. It homogenizes all political beliefs. When you have parliament, if America had a parliamentary system with numerous parties, there would be actual Nazis in our Congress. Actual Nazis, like swastika-waving, actual genuine Nazis. And when they got elected the first time, there'd be 3 of them or 4 of them, and we'd all be kind of outraged and ashamed, and we'd be embarrassed. But someone would have to make coalition with them eventually, because somebody, in order to get to that 51%, to get to that governing majority, they'd have 49.5%. And they've just got to find somebody to agree with them that 1.5% more to give them the majority, and they'll go make a deal with the devil, literally, and make a deal with the Nazis. And then the next election after that, you'd have 48 Nazis get elected to parliament, because now it's been mainstreamed. Now instead of taking people who might drift over toward those radical views and pulling them into the mainstream, you instead validate those radical views and make it a mainstream idea to be a radical. And that's why when you go to Europe, there are major communist factions in every parliament in every Western democracy in Europe. There are genuine white supremacist movements that have parliamentary representation in almost every parliament in Europe. I mean, parliamentary systems swing radically, and they also, and this is why people like Ruth Bader Ginsburg like them, they get a lot more done because they essentially grant ultimate power to the prime minister during the prime minister's tenure, because it would be like if every time you elected a president, he got the Senate and the House and the Supreme Court all to agree with him at the same time, because it requires that confidence in the prime minister in order for him to become prime minister. And so they're very effective at getting things done. But America's great success is in that we don't let politicians do very much. Yep. You know, we all get frustrated, oh, the government doesn't do enough. It does plenty. And it would be even better if it did half as much. Like, you want to know why Texas is so successful? We only let the legislature get together once every 2 years. They can only do half as much bullcrap as the state houses in most other states. So I really think this move toward democracy, Michael, or democratic, true democratic representation is a horrible idea, would do terrible things, would destroy everything that's made America what America is.
Yep.
Elisha, we're going to take one more question.
Awesome. Last question is, can a president really mandate a mask requirement until 2022?
No.
I mean, yes and no, right? We're living under the dictatorship of the lab coats right now, where apparently we've farmed out all of our governance to like Fauci and formerly Dr. Scarf, although she seems to have left the scene. So the answer is no. I mean, certainly in a constitutional system, you can't do that. But because we now are governed by these bureaucrats much more so, there is a world in which they can exert much greater control than probably our founding fathers would have expected.
Yeah, good luck. I won't do it. So now what happens to your plan? This is how all left-wing plans are. All left-wing plans say, if everyone would do everything that I want all the time, then I would get my preferred result. And the problem with their system is that there's guys like me who say, well, I won't do it. So now your whole frickin' plan just collapsed. What are you going to do about it? And ultimately what they do about it is they put us in gulags so that people like me can't get in the way of their utopia. And then it turns out their ideas don't work anyway. But the first problem with their idea is that we won't all do it. The second problem with their idea is after they kill all of us off, the idea is actually revealed to be absolute crap. But no, the president doesn't have that kind of power. I want to thank everyone for tuning in tonight. It was a long night, but it was, I think, on the whole, a very good night for conservatism, a very good night for the president. What will come of it, we'll know in about 2 weeks' time. Thanks, everybody. Daily Wire Backstage is produced by Robert Sterling. Executive producer is me, Jeremy Boring. Our supervising producer is Mathis Glover. Our assistant director is Pavel Wadowski, and our technical producer, Austin Stevens. Editing is by Jim Nickel. Audio is mixed by Mike Coromina, and our audio assistant is Robin Fenderson. Playback is operated by Nick Sheehan, and hair and makeup is by Nika Geneva. Daily Wire Backstage is a Daily Wire production. Copyright Daily Wire 2020. Well, hey there. Now's the time when you hit that like button for me so we can keep smoking cigars and drinking whiskey for your amusement. Or, in Ben's case, eating popcorn directly off the floor. He's weird.